Chapter 861. About 2 to 3 breaths after the bald crane disappeared into one of the caves with the gourd in its arms, the hunchbacked Longley turned into a long arc and flew out of one of the caves with hundreds of thousands of beehive caves. Once he flew out, he instinctively cast his gaze at the spot where he had placed the gourd. Longley was first stunned by what he saw. Damn it, I didn't run into any forks when I came here just now. How could there be another empty spot that leads to the beehive cave? Could it be that the tunnels here have changed on their own? Longley's first thought at that moment was that he had gone the wrong way. He immediately turned around, intending to follow the tunnel he had come out from to sense the gourd again, but he suddenly froze on the spot. His expression instantly became extremely unsightly. He turned around and glared at the spot where he had placed the gourd. It was also at this moment that a few black shadows flew out from the other beehive holes. However, they lingered around the spot where he had placed the gourd, as if they couldn't find the entrance to the beehive. When Longley saw this, there was no longer any doubt in his mind. He was now completely certain that someone had snuck into this place while he was away and stolen the gourd he had placed here to locate him. However, while Longley's expression was dark, there was not a hint of panic on his face. Instead, a murderous aura spread out from his eyes, and he let out a cold harumph. He lifted his right hand and drew a horizontal line at the center of his brows. "I'd like to see just who has the guts to touch my gourd." The gourd was the most important enchanted treasure in Longley's possession, and its origins were even more mysterious. Even Longley had not fully understood it. It was the item that had been wrapped up in the ancient scroll that recorded the 1 Kulpa, 3 snare, and 6 Tao seals in the barren lands of divine essence. Longley had investigated it in secret for many years, but he had never been able to find a single clue about its origins. However, after years of research, as he came to understand the gourd, the ecstasy in his heart grew. But at the same time, he became anxious because he realized that he could only bring out 2/10 of the gourd's power. However, even that was enough for him to be nearly invincible among those in the initial stage of World Plane Realm. In fact, he could even fight against those in the middle stage of World Plane Realm. He might not be able to win against them, but if he wanted to flee, they would not easily chase after him out of wariness. It might have been difficult for Longley to bring out the full effects of the gourd, but he had still been by his side for many years. He had used all sorts of methods to refine it, which had allowed him to form some sort of connection with it, and he could vaguely sense its location. At that moment, as he swiped the center of his brows with his right index finger, a green light immediately shone in Longley's eyes. He looked around, but once he did so, his expression instantly turned even darker. A barely noticeable hint of panic flashed briefly in his eyes. Without any hesitation, he opened his mouth and bit the tip of his right finger, then used his blood to draw a horizontal line at the center of his brows. Once he drew that horizontal line, Longley's ability to sense the gourd instantly increased to its maximum, but Longley's face turned paler. In the end, panic and disbelief replaced the calmness in his eyes. He couldn't sense the location of the gourd at all. It was as if the connection between him and the gourd had been forcibly concealed by someone. That connection might still be there, but it was no different from being broken. What caused Longley's face to turn livid with rage and panic was that the 10 black shadows released by the gourd had returned to their original positions, but they were lingering around each other while letting out shrill roars. There was a violent air about them, and wisps of black smoke spread out from their bodies, but their bodies were gradually becoming thinner. Longley felt as if his heart was bleeding. The 10 black shadows did not come from the gourd itself, but from a method he had come up with. Over the years, he had used all sorts of methods to kill 10 world paragons, then extracted their nascent divinities and refined them into puppets. He used them to protect them, suppress them, and control them. These puppets could even train on their own in the gourd. When he saw that the 10 black shadows were showing signs of disappearing because they could not return to the gourd, Longley instantly swung his arm, and the 10 black shadows immediately charged into his sleeve. He used his own body to temporarily nourish them. There are only a few people who entered the sealed region, so the person who took my gourd must be one of them. Sun Kuan has always coveted my gourd, so the possibility of him being the culprit is the highest. Tianlin has a strange tree, and it's not impossible for him to fuse with my gourd. This person also has a motive. Yi Shantong is the least likely to be the culprit. As for Su Ming, his arts are mysterious, and the possibility of him being the culprit is only second to Sun Kuan and Tianlin. Killing intent appeared in Long Li's eyes. He was also hesitating in his heart. After all, this place was the closest to the World Stone, but once he chose to search for the gourd, it would be difficult for him to return within a short period of time, and there was a high possibility that he would miss the chance to obtain the World Stone. However, if he did not immediately search for the gourd, then with each passing moment his 10 puppets would become weaker, and in the end they would die. Long Li gritted his teeth, and the killing intent in his eyes grew stronger. He leaped forward, turned around, and charged toward the tunnel he had come from. He also spread his divine sense outwards in an attempt to search for the other people's tracks. While Long Li's heart was filled with anger and killing intent as he searched for the other people, the bald crane was swiftly moving through the stone walls with a smug look on its face. It held Long Li's gourd in its right claw, and a layer of black ripples spread out from its body to surround the gourd. This action was the same as when the bald crane broke runes and seals. Clearly, the bald crane was worried that the owner of the gourd would find it, which was why it had used its inborn ability to hide all traces. Because of that, it would be impossible for Long Li to find it. My luck is really good. I just went out for a stroll, and I managed to pick up a treasure like this. But just what is this thing? Why does it look so familiar? As the bald crane charged through the stone walls, it held the gourd in front of its face and scrutinized it. I can't quite remember. I should be missing a lot of my memories, but this gourd looks familiar. It seems like this gourd can kill. The bald crane blinked and brought the gourd closer to it. It widened its eyes and scrutinized it carefully, but even after staring at it blankly for a long time, the bald crane still had a dazed look on its face. When it unknowingly returned to the spot where Su Ming had absorbed the physical power, it crouched down there with a frown on its face, trying to find some clues about its memories from the gourd. Why is Long Li's gourd in your hands? After an unknown amount of time had passed, Su Ming's slightly surprised voice reached the bald crane's ears, and only then did it snap out of its deep thoughts. The bald crane's head was a little swollen, and its mind was still a little dazed. It instinctively answered, "I don't know. I went out for a stroll, and I saw the gourd on the ground, so I picked it up." Su Ming knew the bald crane's personality, so he no longer spoke. Instead, he lifted his right hand and seized the air in the direction of the gourd. Immediately, the gourd flew out of the bald crane's hand and charged towards him. When the bald crane saw the gourd flying away, it immediately snapped out of its dazed state due to the pain in its heart. Just as it was about to argue with Su Ming and was about to explode with rage, Su Ming calmly brought out a large handful of crystals from his bosom and gave them to the bald crane. The bald crane immediately beamed and pounced on them to take them. It would even occasionally bring out a few crystals to bite to determine whether they were real or fake. As for the gourd, it had long since forgotten about it. Su Ming held Long Li's gourd in his hands. The bald crane's black ripples still remained on it. This was not the first time Su Ming saw the gourd. He had seen Long Li use it multiple times, and the black shadows that spread out from the gourd had caught Su Ming's attention. As he scrutinized the gourd, Su Ming did not look down on it because of its ordinary appearance. Instead, with a slightly solemn expression, he sent a wisp of his Atman into it. Once he sent his Atman in, he immediately sensed a great and indescribable force of resistance coming from within, and it instantly crushed the Atman he sent in. Yet at the instant his divine sense was crushed, a violent glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. His breathing quickened slightly at that moment. He widened his eyes and looked at the gourd carefully. After a moment, he sent another wisp of divine sense into it. And the instant that divine sense was crushed by the resistance force once again, a drastic change appeared on Su Ming's calm face. There's such a thick aura of death in this thing. In fact, this aura of death is very strange. It can actually resonate with my soul. Su Ming's soul trembled violently when his Atman was crushed twice. This feeling made him feel as if he and the gourd had come from the same place. When Su Ming's soul trembled twice, clear cracking sounds suddenly came from the gourd. Su Ming immediately saw the bald crane's black ripples around the gourd shatter, and all the incredibly complicated and messy seals on the gourd that Long Li had tried to use over the years shattered at that instant. Once they shattered, the gourd shone with a glossy green light. When it floated before Su Ming, an open eye appeared on its smooth surface. That eye was open, and it was looking at Su Ming with a scrutinizing gaze. Su Ming stared at the gourd before him in a daze, then looked at the eye on the gourd. At that moment, his heart was filled with luck, and without any hesitation, he struck his forehead with his right hand. With it, his soul spread out from his body. Almost at the same instant, a powerful light shone in the eye on the gourd, and its gaze as it looked at Su Ming gradually turned from scrutinizing to gentle. It was also at that moment that the dark light in the eyes of the skeleton whose body had been pierced through by the 3 swords in the depths of Crimson Flame Planet instantly grew brighter. In fact, there was even a hint of great excitement in its eyes. The presence of an abyss builder. There's no mistaking it. This is the soul of an abyss builder. Is there truly an abyss builder in this world? This is the fortune of the 5th true world. This is the fortune of all the races in the world to rise to power. My body has recovered slightly. I still have 3 more bottles tomorrow. My cough today is worse than yesterday, but my head is no longer as dizzy. It's just that when I cough, my chest hurts, but I can't not smoke and write. It's painful. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 862. Su Ming's soul spread out from his physical body, and during that instant, he resonated with the gourd before him. This resonance caused the eyes on the gourd to become even brighter when they looked at Su Ming. In the end, respect appeared in those eyes, as if they were the gourd's soul, and during that instant, it had acknowledged Su Ming. Soon after, 8 eyes appeared one after another on the gourd. Along with the previous one, there were now 9 flashing eyes, and all 9 of them were looking at Su Ming at the same time. During that instant, when Su Ming's soul rippled, Long Li, who was spreading his divine sense to search for the others in the tunnel of the beehive, came to an abrupt halt. His expression changed drastically, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned pale, and he staggered a few steps backwards. Only when he supported himself against the stone wall by his side did he manage to stop moving. During that instant, he looked as if he had aged several dozens of years from his youthful appearance. Wrinkles appeared on his face, and his eyes became lifeless for an instant. I spent countless years to figure out how to use the gourd, and I even prepared 10 souls of world paragons to control it. But now, the person who stole my gourd only used less than an hour to completely sever the connection between me and the gourd. Long Li laughed loudly, and as he laughed, he started coughing violently. Blood trickled out of the corners of his mouth once again. Clearly, he had suffered a backlash once his connection with the gourd was severed. The more one cared about the gourd, the stronger this backlash would be. Judging by Long Li's expression, it was clear that the gourd was the item he cared about the most. You shameless scum! You stole my treasure. Even if I have to pay a greater price, I will definitely not let you take my treasure away. Madness appeared in Long Li's eyes. He lifted his head and let out a shrill roar. His roar reverberated in all directions and continued traveling through the tunnel of the beehive. As his roar continued traveling through the tunnel, Sun Kuan, who was the closest to the depths of the seal, heard it vaguely. He stopped moving forward for a moment, and a glint appeared in his eyes. It's that old monster Long's voice. Could it be that he lost his gourd? If the gourd was really lost, it would be a good thing. I wonder who stole it. Sun Kuan mumbled under his breath, and regret and pity appeared on his face. He had been drooling over Long Li's gourd for a long time. In the distance, Tianlin had already covered most of the densely packed beehive seals after searching for more than half a year. He believed that it wouldn't be long before he would be able to cover more than 90% of the seals. At that time, he would be able to find the most direct path that would lead directly to the core of the maze-like seal grounds. When Long Li's voice reached him, it was already indistinct, and he could not hear it clearly. However, the branches of the tree that was Tianlin had spread out and filled most of the sealed region. Each branch was his clone, and because of that, Long Li's voice sounded as if it was right beside his ears. Sun Kuan is most likely the one who stole Long Li's treasures. Right now, these two aren't on the same side as me, so it's a good thing for them to fight against each other first. With Sun Kuan's cunning, he won't die, but he'll be able to hide until Jingnan Zi is lured here. At that time, they'll have no choice but to be on the same side as me. Tianlin laughed coldly and closed his eyes. He spread out the branches of the tree once again and covered the entire sealed region. Su Ming also heard Long Li's voice, but at that moment, he did not have the time to bother with it. He was being stared at by the 9 eyes. As he spread out the power of his soul, the second of the 9 eyes gradually became brighter. As time passed, when the 8th eye also became brighter, the bald crane suddenly sucked in a sharp breath and widened its eyes. It had a vague feeling that it seemed to have remembered something, but when it thought about it carefully, it found that it was very vague. After all, this was the first time it had taken the initiative to recall some of its memories, and it was completely different from the memories it usually had when it came into contact with realms passively. As it tried its best to think about it, the 9 eyes on Su Ming's gourd shone brightly. But once they shone, they disappeared one by one. In the end, only one eye was left on the gourd, and it looked around the area. When it saw the bald crane, the eye on the gourd suddenly pierced through the bald crane's eyes like a sharp sword, as if it had locked onto it. The bald crane suddenly screamed at that instant, and a monstrous amount of terror and shock appeared in its eyes. A vague picture appeared in its head. In that picture, it was not bald, but had beautiful feathers that would make the bald crane envious. It saw itself sneaking furtive glances at something, but suddenly an old man dressed in a wide Taoist robe appeared in front of it. The old man swung his arm, and the bald crane immediately retreated several worlds into the distance. Immediately after, it saw the old man bringing out a gourd from his bosom with an enraged look on his face. Once that gourd was brought out, 9 eyes appeared on it. 5 of the 9 pairs of eyes instantly locked onto the bald crane, and a sense of life-threatening danger rose in its heart. The bald crane saw itself swiftly retreating with a sharp cry. However, he soon heard a gloomy voice filled with endless anger. "Treasured gourd, please kill him. Old Taoist Luya, didn't I just eat a few of your Tao cores? Didn't I just see how you personally created them? Why you? How dare you ask our little brother gourd to come out?" The bald crane saw all its feathers swell up as it screamed, and once the old Taoist spoke, the 5 eyes on the gourd that had locked onto it blinked at the same time. Immediately, a wisp of green smoke flew out of the gourd. Within it was a child the size of a palm. He held an even smaller sword in his hand, but with an indescribable speed, he charged towards the bald crane. Pain. It was a pain that could not be described with words. That was what the bald crane felt when its memories ended. I remember now. This is old Taoist Luya's immortal slaying gourd. But why do I remember that this gourd was destroyed? When Luya fought against Taixing Su, one of the 4 great true progenitors, it was crushed. As the bald crane screamed, it immediately retreated. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. At that moment, he had only formed a connection with the gourd, but he had not obtained the method to control it. When he saw the bald crane's violent actions, Su Ming, who had noticed many things about the bald crane ever since he came to the barren lands of divine essence, suddenly spoke. "How do I use this thing? I don't know how to use it either. I only remember that I once saw Luya tell this damn gourd to kill him. The bald crane had no feathers on its body, or else its feathers would definitely be standing on end. Once it heard Su Ming's words, it instinctively spoke, but once it finished speaking, it immediately regretted it. because once Su Ming heard it, he spoke as well. "Treasured gourd, please kill." When Su Ming said those words, a presence that made even Su Ming's heart jump in fear suddenly spread out from the gourd. Under that presence, the eyes on the gourd suddenly showed signs of blinking. By the looks of it, if Su Ming finished his last word, the gourd would kill him. At the same time, an apathetic and aloof voice appeared in Su Ming's mind. "Insufficient energy storage. More than 8/10 of your body has been damaged. Search for replenishment as soon as possible. Locate the enemy." Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. When the bald crane was so terrified that its soul almost left its body, he did not say the last word. Instead, once his soul returned to his physical body, he got up, lifted his right hand, and grabbed the gourd to put it away into his storage bag. Su Ming's eyes sparkled, and great confidence suddenly appeared on his body. This confidence was something he had gained when he became the god of berserkers in the land of berserkers in Death Expanse Cosmos. Right then, in the barren lands of divine essence, this confidence appeared once again on Su Ming. With this gourd and the poisonous wasp, the large amount of blue stones that contain the power of flesh and blood, and the god ascension nectar that I can extract from the wasp's body at any time, it's not as if I can't rule over an area in the barren lands of divine essence. But it's a pity that the gourd's spirit body is heavily injured. But this thing is rather mysterious. It can actually replenish itself. Right now, it's only 8/10 damaged, but it can still bring out an astonishing amount of power. If I can replenish it completely, then this thing will definitely become a force that defies the heavens. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. He did not have a suitable container to store the God Ascension Nectar, and he did not know how long he would need to absorb it, which was why he had not absorbed it. He wanted to search for a suitable place to quietly refine the God Ascension Nectar once he left this place. He had also placed a divine thought on the poisonous wasp, forbidding it from absorbing the nectar in its body and only using it to store it. Once Su Ming put away the gourd, the bald crane slowly calmed down from its fear and stared at him anxiously. Su Ming cast the bald crane a glance, then brought out another handful of crystals from his storage bag and gave them to the bald crane. Once the bald crane obtained the consolation from the crystals, it became satisfied. Su Ming closed his eyes and quelled the emotions in his heart, then continued immersing himself in the process of absorbing the physical power in this place. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, another 2 months went by. During these 2 months, Su Ming's absorption speed became faster, and he continued moving forward slowly, getting closer to the spot where the world stone was. On the day 2 months later, there was only a stone wall of less than 10 feet between him and the world stone. It was also at this time that Long Li, who had been searching for the person who had snatched his gourd for 2 months, wandered about the beehive seal with his hair in a disheveled mess. Perhaps fate truly existed, because when he had been searching for the world stone in a hurry, he could not find the entrance. However, when he lost the gourd and went into a frenzy to search for the thief, he walked out of a tunnel without his knowledge, and with just one glance, he saw the stone of one world floating in midair above the rune on the ground. At the same time, Sun Kuan walked out of a tunnel with an excited look on his face. Before him was a gigantic empty space, and at the center of it was a pool of purplish-black magma. He also saw the Duke of Crimson Flame's ghastly white bones submerged in the magma. The presence of world planes in this place was so thick that it instantly made Sun Kuan ecstatic. His breathing quickened, but he did not immediately move forward. Instead, he quickly sat down cross-legged in a corner and started exercising his breathing to absorb the aura. He did not think about going over to save the alien. His main goal was the thick power of world planes in this place. If it was possible, he wanted to use a secret art to devour the alien's bones and soul so that he could make himself stronger. I pray that it won't turn into pneumonia. All right, I'm going to lie down for a while. My chest hurts. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 863. I felt hot again at night. When I woke up, my whole body was wet. I remembered that it was Monday. That should be right, it was Monday. Remind everyone to vote for me. Thank you, brothers and sisters, to be continued. If you like this work, please come come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 864. When Longley saw the world stone at the center of the 9 flags, he immediately held his breath for an instant. A brilliant light shone in his eyes, and after being momentarily stunned, he started laughing loudly. Everything in the world has its own meaning. I lost the gourd, but I obtained the world stone. Longley was incredibly sentimental at that moment, but no matter what, he was a world paragon. Soon, he forced down his emotions and excitement and approached the rune. A faint glint appeared in his eyes as he stared at the world stone. In silence, he brought out the ancient scroll from his bosom. Once he studied it carefully, Longley formed a seal with his right hand and immediately struck the entrance behind him. Dark light immediately shone at the entrance, and the entire entrance was covered by a gigantic diamond-shaped mark of light. It flickered a few times and sealed the entrance shut. Based on the descriptions in the ancient scroll, it won't be easy to take out the world stone with the secondary core. Not only will I need a lot of skill, I'll also need some time, and during this process, I can't be disturbed. Longley remained silent, but he still did not feel at ease. He lifted his left hand, formed a seal, and swiftly tapped the center of his brows. Immediately, 9 diamond-shaped scales appeared at the center of his brows. Once they separated from his flesh and blood, they surrounded the area. Light shone continuously, and within that light, a cocoon of light was formed. It enveloped Longley within it, forming the tightest defense possible. Only then did Longley relax. His breathing quickened slightly, and he stared at the world stone. When he lifted his right hand, he hesitated for a moment. When I take out the world stone with the secondary core, the runes sealing this place will weaken by a large margin. Also, this stone that contains the power of one world will also spread out the power of the world, causing people to fall into a daze. But with my level of cultivation, I should be able to withstand it. Longley no longer hesitated. He lifted his right hand and formed a strange seal, then pointed at the world stone floating in midair. With it, the 9 flags on the ground immediately started dancing in a bizarre manner. 9 green-faced Kirans manifested, and as they moved about in the area, they let out low growls at Longley. At the same time, a powerful light suddenly erupted from the world stone, as if it had been stirred up by Longley's strange attack just now. Long rivers, mountains, and plains immediately appeared on the surface of the world stone, along with the faces of all manner of lives. Happiness, anger, sorrow, joy, birth, aging, sickness, and death instantly filled the air. Soon after, a ripple filled with the power of a world plane swiftly spread out from the world stone. When the 9-headed green-faced Kiran was touched by the ripple, it instantly stopped growling. Instead, it closed its eyes as if it was in deep sleep. Longley was not too far away. His body was instantly enveloped by the ripple, but he seemed to have been prepared for it since a long time ago. He did not dodge, but at the instant the ripple closed in on him, he suddenly bit the tip of his tongue and coughed up a mouthful of blood. He lifted his right hand and swung it, and immediately 10 dull black shadows flew out from his sleeves and crawled into his body through his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. The ripple spreading out from the world stone shot straight through the defense Longley had placed, but it did not damage him. Instead, once it shot through, it swept through the area and reverberated in the air. The person closest to the ripple was naturally Su Ming, who was only 10 feet away from the stone wall. Once the ripple shot through the stone wall, it swiftly reached Su Ming. Su Ming was absorbing the physical power in the place. Before he could react to the ripple that was filled with the power of one world that had suddenly appeared, it had already swept past his body. In fact, even the bald crane was momentarily stunned before it was also enveloped by the ripple. At that moment, if anyone stood at the highest point of the sealed region and lowered their heads to look, then if they could see through the stone walls, they would be able to clearly see a ring-shaped ripple spreading swiftly towards the beehive sealed with the world stone as its center. This spreading had happened too suddenly. Forget Su Ming, even Tian Lin and Sun Kuan, who were both experienced schemers, had not expected this sort of result. After all, the ancient scroll Long Li had obtained was a secret that was as hidden in his heart as it was in the gourd. The ripple instantly closed in on Tian Lin. At that moment, Tian Lin was still in the form of a big tree, but all his branches were rapidly shrinking back. This was because he knew the correct path to enter the depths of the sealed region. However, at the instant his branches shrank back, his big tree body shuddered. One of his branches was the first to touch the ripple, and almost in an instant, a small portion of his many branches touched the ripple containing the power of one world. Due to the fact that the ripples had spread far and wide, Tian Lin's heart trembled, and he wanted to swiftly recover from his tree form. However, most of his branches had already been touched by the ripples and had sunk into a deep slumber. Even his consciousness was on the verge of dissipating. There was only a sense of danger erupting in his heart, but it was completely useless. After a moment, Tian Lin, who was in his half-tree and half-man form, closed his eyes and sank into the ripple from the world stone as if he was in deep sleep. The last person to be affected was Sun Kuan, who had already entered the depths of the sealed region and was sitting cross-legged in the purplish-black magma, where the Duke of Crimson Flame was while excitedly absorbing the thick power of the world plane. He had fallen unconscious without even the slightest bit of notice. In fact, it could be said that he did not even know that he had fallen unconscious. When the ripple swept past him, he was still immersed in the excitement of absorbing the power of the world plane. Less than 10 breaths had passed since the ripple spread out from the world stone until it covered the entire sealed region. After those 10 breaths, the ripple disappeared, and the sealed region instantly fell silent. However, this silence did not last for long. Cracking sounds reverberated in the sealed region, and every single time they rang out, it sounded as if something was shattering. As these sounds echoed in the air, the dark light in the eyes of the skeleton in the purplish-black magma in the depths of the sealed region shone brightly. The sword at the top of his skull started loosening once again, looking as if it was about to be forced out of his skull. Flesh and blood started growing on the skeleton's body once again. Then, an endless amount of white threads appeared around him, a telling sign that a new round of death by 1,000 cuts was about to be carried out. However, about 70 to 80% of the white threads that appeared this time were damaged. Even after they swept past the skeleton several times, there was still some flesh remaining on the skeleton's face. This was something that would have been impossible in the past, but now it had happened. The skeleton opened his mouth as if he was laughing soundlessly. His face was rapidly recovering, and it was the same for his entire body. The white threads around him were also sweeping back and forth ceaselessly, forming a form of resistance against each other. However, a large number of the white threads had shattered, causing them to be unable to completely scrape off all of the skeleton's flesh and blood like before. Every single time, a little bit of flesh and blood would be left behind, but even if it was just a little bit of flesh and blood, if it accumulated to a large amount, it would still be shocking, and it would also be a form of hope. If this continued, then perhaps it would take a long time before the skeleton could truly recover all of its flesh and blood. Su Ming and the others would then continue to sleep, and no one would come and bother them. The operation to break into the sealed grounds would also be put on hold because of this matter. As for whether it was a good or bad thing, no one could tell. However, it was clear that things did not develop as they had expected. On the second day of everyone's slumber, in the empty space where Tian Lin was in his half-human, half-tree form, cracks gradually appeared on one of the tree branches that his body had transformed into. Perhaps because Tian Lin had lost control of his consciousness during his slumber, cracks gradually appeared on this branch. Slowly, a drop of green liquid dripped down from the crack in the tree trunk. That drop of liquid fell to the ground with a thud, but did not shatter. Instead, it stood upright on the ground. Once the liquid became murky, it slowly turned into a layer of green fog. That fog rose into the air, and once it occupied an area of about 5 feet, it swiftly shrank inwards. As it shrank, a small person the size of a palm appeared in the fog. As the fog shrank even faster, that person's figure became clearer. In the blink of an eye, once all the fog was absorbed, the small person's complete appearance was revealed. It was Yi Shun Tong. There was a slightly dazed look on his face. He floated in midair and looked around him, but the dazed look on his face only grew stronger. After some time, the small person that was Yi Shun Tong seemed to have remembered something. As he mumbled under his breath, he charged towards the world outside. This was something Tian Lin had not expected. He had previously imprisoned Yi Shun Tong with the intention of releasing him at a suitable moment so that he could summon Jing Nanzi. That was why he had left behind some illusions in Yi Shun Tong's mind, so that he could ensure that once Yi Shun Tong woke up, he would be able to complete this action without his real body noticing it. Tian Lin had prepared for this for many years, but due to the ripples from the world stone spreading out, he had lost his consciousness, causing his plan to be brought forward. As the small person that was Yi Shun Tong swiftly left the place, he appeared on the ground of Crimson Flame Planet several hours later. His entire body was burning, and once he used a unique method to set up a rune for 3 days, he sent out the final shred of his clone's consciousness. At that instant, his clone died. However, at the moment he died, there was a large number of cultivation planets filled with life force and spiritual energy in the area where the 4 great true worlds were keeping watch over the barren lands of divine essence. There were plenty of powerful warriors from the 4 great true worlds there as well. When they did not head out to carry out their missions, most of them would isolate themselves in the places they chose to train. At that moment, there was a blood-red mountain on a yellowish-brown cultivation planet in the vast galaxy. The color of the mountain was bright red because blood-red rain was falling from the sky. At the top of the mountain was a bare-chested man. His hair was very long, and it floated in the wind. By his side was a red helmet and armor that was also red in color. He sat there bare-chested and simply allowed the bloody rain to fall on his body. Drops of blood were left on his chest, but he was completely unbothered by it. As he closed his eyes, he breathed slowly. With each breath he took, the blood-red world would roar. He was Jing Nanzi. My condition has worsened. Today is the same as the first day. It should have turned into pneumonia. I'm coughing nonstop, and every single time I cough, I'll feel pain in my chest, and my breathing will quicken. I'm feverish again. I didn't edit this chapter. Please forgive me. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 865. A red bolt of lightning flashed through the sky with a loud bang. Jing Nanzi's eyes narrowed slightly, and a sharp, freezing glare shone through that slit. There was also a faint hint of surprise in his gaze. One of the eyes and ears I left in the world outside is summoning me. Jing Nanzi slowly lifted his right hand and formed a few seals in front of him, as if he was calculating something. As he continued forming those seals, the thunderous roars in the world that was raining blood grew louder. The booming sounds practically connected together, causing the red on the ground to be in a state of intense alternating between light and darkness, as if the apocalypse had arrived. The speed at which Jing Nanzi formed the seals with his right hand became faster, and wisps of green smoke spread out from his fingers. Those wisps of smoke were illusory and indistinct, but if anyone took a closer look, they would be able to see Tian Lin, Long Li, Sun Kuan, and Su Ming's figures within the green wisps of smoke. As these figures appeared, the sealed region of Crimson Flame Planet was revealed within the green wisps of smoke. At that moment, when the thunderous roars in the sky reached their most intense state, Jing Nanzi's expression changed drastically. Disbelief first appeared on his face, then he stood up swiftly. However, as he gradually read through all the memories of Yi Shun Tong's clone before his death, he found that Jing Nanzi was still standing there with a constantly changing expression on his face. He seemed to be hesitating about something, but after a long while, a resolute look appeared on his face. There was also a hint of ferociousness and ecstasy that shone briefly in his eyes. If I can make this great contribution on my own, then I can end my garrison here ahead of schedule. In fact, I can even obtain 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 times the amount of resources. This will definitely be a change in the alien race. If I can suppress it alone, then I can obtain the greatest reward from the union of the four great true worlds, the right to enter Heavenly Sky Planet to train. As Jingnan Zi's eyes sparkled, excitement that he could not suppress appeared in them. Heavenly Sky Planet is opened once every 100,000 years. Only less than 30 people can enter each time. It's practically the holy land for training that the four great true worlds have already decided beforehand. The time for it to open is not too far away now. If I can obtain the right to enter this time, then I am 7/10 certain that when I come out, I will be half a step in a solar Culpa realm. Jing Nanzi no longer hesitated. He grabbed the air with his right hand toward the red armor that was drenched in blood. The armor instantly flew up and turned into pieces that covered his entire body. Then they connected with each other and formed a red armor. Jing Nanzi, who was wearing the armor, looked like he was filled with a murderous aura. As his crimson hair danced in the rain of blood, he picked up his helmet and put it on. Then he turned around and took a step towards the blood-red mountain. Boom! The mountain was torn apart. An array of red light flew out from the collapsed mountain. It was a long, crimson coffin-like object. Light flashed on it, and there were countless runes on it. It was enough to make people's hearts tremble at first glance. Jing Nanzi took a step towards the crimson coffin. When he touched it, his body fused into it. Then, as a large amount of runes shone on the coffin, it turned into a piercing ray of light that charged into the sky with a bang at an indescribable speed. In the face of the blood rain, the coffin flew out of the cultivation planet in the blink of an eye and charged towards Crimson Flame Planet in the vast galaxy in a long arc days passed by. The people in the seal on Crimson Flame Planet still did not move. They were all immersed in the power of the World Stone. There was a dazed look on Su Ming's face. No one knew what he had seen in the ripples on the World Stone. The bald crane was drooling as it mumbled under its breath, speaking words that even it itself might not be able to hear clearly. At that moment, it was already nighttime in Crimson Flame Planet. Most of the people did not venture out. After all, the ferocious beasts in Crimson Flame Planet had walked out of the sealed region. Everything was different from before. To the cultivators in this place, the caution they had accumulated over the past few years was the barrier that kept them safe. It was especially so during night. It was not quiet. Occasionally, the roars of ferocious beasts would slice through the night sky and spread in all directions. The old woman in the house in the mountain in the eastern region of Crimson Flame Planet was sitting cross-legged in the house. She had rarely ventured out over the past few years. She had always been feeling slightly uneasy, but in the end, she could only sigh. On this night, as the old woman was meditating, her eyes suddenly flew open, and a hint of shock appeared in them. The entire night sky of Crimson Flame Planet turned red at that instant. All the cultivators on the ground were shocked awake and lifted their heads simultaneously to look at the sky in shock. In fact, even the ferocious beasts that were roaring abruptly no longer let out a single sound. The thing that caused the sky of Crimson Flame Planet to turn red at that moment was a piercing ray of red light. That red light was appearing in the sky, a telling sign that it was coming from the world beyond at an extreme speed. At that moment, it was moving through the layer of aura layer in Crimson Flame Planet. That red light was too fast, so fast that no one could see what was clearly. In the blink of an eye, it looked as if it had burned the sky and charged towards the ground. Once it crashed into the ground, a wave of impact that looked like a violent gust of wind swept outwards from the spot where it crashed into the ground. Wherever that wave of impact went, the ground would be eroded. Even the volcanoes were instantly reduced to dust. All the living beings in a circular area of several tens of thousands of lis could not even let out a scream of pain. Besides those in the peak of heaven cultivation realm, all the others died in an instant. However, even those in the peak of heaven cultivation realm coughed up a huge mouthful of blood and were heavily injured. Once the booming sound faded away, a gigantic red coffin could be seen at the spot where the red light had crashed into the ground at the center of the impact. Nearly 3/10 of it was stabbed diagonally into the ground. There were countless bumps and bumps on the coffin, and as light flowed out in all directions, a face immediately popped up on the surface of the coffin lid. More accurately speaking, it was a face wearing a helmet. Gradually, as if Jing Nanzi had pierced through the coffin, his head and body came out, and he walked out of the coffin. Once he cast a glance at the ground around him, Jing Nanzi let out a cold harumph. As murderous aura surged into the sky, he struck the coffin with his right hand. Immediately, the runic symbols on the coffin shone violently once again and turned into a long red spear that Jing Nanzi held in his hand. At the instant he held the blood-red spear, a power that belonged to those in the middle stage of World Plane Realm, which he did not bother hiding and was at the peak of his condition, erupted from his body. At the instant it swept through the entire Crimson Flame planet. He used this method to tell all the people in the place that he had arrived. At the same time, Jing Nanzi lifted his left hand, and a jade slip appeared on his palm. When he squeezed that jade slip, green light immediately spread out and covered the area under his feet. It was so quick that in the span of 10 breaths, the green light covered all the land, the bodies of all the cultivators, and all the ferocious beasts in Crimson Flame Planet. It even seeped into the depths of the ground and covered the sealed region. Then, an illusory projection that was several dozens of feet big instantly spread out from the jade slip in Jing Nanzi's hand. Within it was a complete Crimson Flame Planet. This scene was practically the same as when the ancient bronze sword had come to Crimson Flame Planet many years ago to investigate its surroundings. As the green light covered the bodies of all the living beings in Crimson Flame Planet, all the cultivators in the place knew clearly that the true guards had descended. The old woman in the house in the mountain in the eastern region was trembling at that moment. Her face was pale, and panic appeared on her face. The ripples of power spreading out from her made it clear that she was submitting. Jing Nanzi cast a glance at the illusory projection, then disappeared without a trace. When he reappeared, he was already in the gigantic crack in the canyon where Su Ming and the others had stayed for a period of time in the past. Jing Nanzi charged forward through the tunnel. It was also at that instant that the ripples of power and mighty pressure from Jing Nanzi's arrival caused the people in the seal to tremble to varying degrees while they were immersed in the mysteries of the world stones. Su Ming shuddered violently as he remained seated. A hint of struggle appeared in his lifeless and dazed eyes. A brilliant light shone in them, and he looked as if he had instantly snapped out of his stupor. A rarely seen look of shock appeared on his face. What sort of power is this? It's equivalent to the undying and imperishable world, and it made me sink into it to the point that I can't extricate myself. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. Sweat broke out on his forehead, and the stones around him had become much looser. At the instant Su Ming stood up, most of the stones around him turned into ashes. The barrier of 10 feet also disappeared before Su Ming's eyes at that instant. It allowed Su Ming to see the dimension 10 feet away from him. He also saw Long Li trembling in the diamond-shaped screen of light, as well as the 9 flags and the 9 green-faced Kirans by his side. There was also a stone shining with a brilliant light floating in the screen of light. At the instant Su Ming looked towards the stone, a bang rang out in his head, and the dazed state from before appeared once again. If Su Ming had not immediately bit the tip of his tongue, he might have immediately sunk into oblivion. He sucked in a sharp breath and no longer looked at the stone, but he knew clearly that the source of his unconsciousness was this stone. Judging by the way Long Li had set up the rune to protect himself, it was clear that he had been prepared for this since a long time ago. Based on that, there was a high possibility that Long Li had intentionally created all of this. Just what is this thing? How could it possess such shocking power? A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He did not look at the stone, but at the ancient scroll placed before Long Li. Right at that instant, a muffled boom suddenly came from the distance. Along with it was a terrifying presence that caused Su Ming's heart to tremble. It was rapidly spreading out from the distance and covering the entire area. That presence was incredibly domineering. Su Ming might be unfamiliar with it, but that domineering presence made him remember the divine sense that had spread out from the True Guards when they were patrolling the area in the past. At that moment, Su Ming's pupils shrank. He saw a layer of green light seeping through the stone walls around him, and it was swiftly spreading out to cover the entire area. He was not unfamiliar with this scene. This was the scene that had appeared when the True Guard had arrived in the past. True Guards have arrived. Su Ming immediately remembered the conversation between Tianlin and Yi Shintong. Without any hesitation, he moved, intending to leave so that he would not be covered by the green light. However, when he cast a glance at the ancient scroll before Long Li, his footsteps came to a halt. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I feel dizzy, and I feel like vomiting. I will continue writing 2 chapters a day and do my best. To be continued. If you like this work, please come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 866. Since Long Li placed this ancient scroll in front of him, then it's clear that this thing is incredibly important to him. I wonder if it's an enchanted treasure or some other secrets are recorded in it. A thought appeared in Su Ming's heart, but he soon suppressed the thought of waking up the bald crane and having it bring the ancient scroll to him. This was too unwise, and it was incredibly risky. Besides, the sealed region was filled with strange and ever-changing things. Time was of the essence, and the True Guard's powerful presence was swiftly closing in on them from a distance. The green light was also coming to envelop them. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He turned around resolutely, and with one move, he appeared next to the unconscious bald crane. Once he grabbed it, he placed it into his storage bag and charged forward through the stone wall. Just what happened? Why would a True Guard ascend here? Could it be that I've been unconscious for more than several years, and the True Guard patrols beyond Crimson Flame Planet have started again? If that's not the case, then Tianlin must have executed his plan. Su Ming moved forward with his physical power in the stone wall, but before he could go too far, a violent bang immediately came from the spot where the world stone was located behind him. In the midst of that bang, Su Ming heard Long Li's low growl. "Sinner ant." At the same time, as Long Li's low growl echoed in the air, a voice that would cause endless chills to rise in people's hearts and even make their noses tingle with the stench of blood. Su Ming's heart trembled, his pupils shrank, and he charged forward at an even faster speed. He could sense that Long Li was fleeing from one of the tunnels in the beehive behind him, and there was a terrifying presence chasing after him at a moderate pace. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. As he circulated his cultivation base, he became even more cautious. However, before an hour had passed, another violent, muffled bang came from the sealed region once again. The place where that bang came from was not too far away from where Su Ming was. Tianlin's roars also traveled into his ears. "Sun Quan, Su Ming, if the two of you continue hiding here, then you'll definitely die. Come out and kill this True Guard." There was a shrill and hoarse tone in Tianlin's voice. Clearly, the bang just now had caused him to suffer severe injuries. "Fellow Taoist Sun, fellow Taoist Su, this True Guard is in the middle stage of World Plane Realm. No matter how well the two of you hide, it will be difficult for you to escape death. Why don't you come out and fight against him together?" There was a hint of weakness in Long Li's voice as it echoed in the air. "Oh, Sun Quan, Su Ming. 4 of them are still alive, but there are only 3 glowing spots in my detection. Interesting. Could it be that there are other people besides the alien races in the barren lands of divine essence whose blood has not been recorded?" Jing Nanzi's aloof voice also rose into the air. Booming sounds continued echoing in the air. Muffled roars, arts clashing against each other, and shrill, piercing sounds might have come from the distance, but Su Ming could hear them as he charged forward. He could already imagine just how brutal the battle was. Su Ming knew that this was not a battle he could easily participate in. As he charged forward, he no longer headed deeper into the sealed region, but moved swiftly towards the exit. When Su Ming fled, Sun Quan, who was at the core of the sealed region, had a constantly changing expression on his face. He could hear the booming sounds and roars that reached his ears clearly. At that moment, he gritted his teeth, got up, and charged toward the tunnel by his side. His body instantly became semi-indistinct. Damn it, they said my name. If that's the case, even if I escape from this place, I'll still be hunted down. If I don't want to never have a day of peace as a wanted criminal, I'll have to fight. It was not that Sun Quan had never thought about escaping, but there were members of his family in his cultivation planet. If he was truly hunted down, then his family members would definitely be the first to be brutally killed. Sun Quan disappeared into the tunnel and charged towards the spot where the booming sound were coming from. By then, Su Ming was already very close to the exit at the edge. He had also arrived at the area where the countless red threads of life force had died, which they had entered the very beginning. Yet the moment he arrived, Su Ming's footsteps came to an abrupt halt. Before him was a man with long red hair, sitting cross-legged and meditating. That man was sitting calmly. His helmet was placed by his side, and his face was filled with a cold and callous air. His long and narrow eyes might have been closed at that moment, but it still gave Su Ming the misconception that he was facing an ancient, ferocious beast. Are you the person whose bloodline was not recorded during my inspection? When the cold and dark voice tumbled out of the person's mouth, the red-haired man slowly opened his eyes. At the instant he did so, a red glare that looked like fresh blood filled the area. Su Ming did not notice this person. He had not noticed his existence with his divine sense just now, but the presence spreading out from his body was the same as the true guards he had sensed previously. However, at that moment, Tian Lin and the others were fighting against the true guards. If that was the case, then the person who remained in this place was definitely just a clone or a nascent divinity. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Without any hesitation, he immediately moved backwards, looking as if he wanted to avoid the attack. His actions also matched the red-haired man's judgment. You're just an earth cultivation realm. What a waste of the clone I left here. The red-haired man shook his head, then lifted his right hand and pointed at Su Ming in a very casual manner. Boom! Su Ming coughed up blood and immediately became dispirited, looking as if he had been gravely injured. He swung his right arm before him, and his body tumbled backwards like a kite with its string snapped. However, the red-haired man did not notice that when Su Ming swung his arm as he tumbled backwards, an illusory shadow shot out from his sleeve and stung the air. That shadow was a poisonous wasp, but the spot where it had stung was empty. There was only emptiness there. You're weaker than an ant. The red-haired man stood up and took a step towards Su Ming with the helmet in hand. When he was in midair, he lifted his left hand once again. This time, he straightened his fingers and pushed his palm down on the retreating Su Ming through the air. However, during that instant, a freezing glare suddenly shone in Su Ming's eyes as blood trickled out of the corners of his mouth, and he fell backwards. He stared at the spot where the red-haired man was, and the dispirited look on his face instantly disappeared, replaced by killing intent. He lifted his right hand in an instant, his palm facing upwards and the back of his hand facing downwards. As he changed this back and forth, a wave of destiny's power swiftly spread out from Su Ming's body. Su Ming executed his inborn divine ability to change the flow of time at that moment, but he did not use it on the red-haired man. Instead, he used it on his own body. Because of it, the red-haired man was still moving forward, and Su Ming's retreating body looked as if time was flowing in reverse. He turned from retreating to charging forward, and due to the power of time contained within that burst of speed, even the red-haired man was momentarily stunned. In the blink of an eye, Su Ming had already appeared in front of the red-haired man. This was not Su Ming charging forward on his own. Instead, as time flowed in reverse, he had moved forward from retreating. Perhaps it would be more accurate to say that he had appeared in this spot before at some point in time. However, at that time, when Su Ming was in this spot, he had forced himself to cough up blood. With that blood as a disguise, he swung his arm, and the poisonous wasp flew out from the opening of his sleeve. It stung the empty space beside him. At that moment, as Su Ming's time flowed in reverse, his poisonous wasp also did the same thing. At that moment, it appeared beside Su Ming, and it was also right beside the red-haired man who had stood up and chased after Su Ming. Sharp stings shot out of the poisonous wasp's tail. Those sharp stings shone with a strange and enchanting light as they pierced into space. However, the poisonous wasp had indeed pierced into space in the past, but right then, the red-haired man's figure appeared in the space that was originally empty. All of this seemed to have been planned beforehand. The poisonous wasp's sharp stings swiftly pierced the red-haired man's right arm. He used destiny's art to change himself and not others. From this, it could be seen that Su Ming's usage of the power of destiny had become different from before. He had become much more familiar with it, and there was even a hint of him being able to use it with ease. "You're just a clone, and you want to kill me?" Su Ming laughed coldly. All of his previous actions had been to make the poisonous wasp sting the red-haired man. He knew just how terrifying the poisonous wasp's poison was, but no matter how strong it was, if it could not stab into the other's body, then it would be completely useless. Su Ming did not have the confidence that the poisonous wasp would be able to hide itself from the true guards, who were Tian Lin and the other's divine sense and level of cultivation. That was why, to be safe, he had not hesitated to retreat and cough up blood to set up this trap in an incredibly short amount of time. At that moment, as the red-haired man's body trembled violently, he let out a shrill roar. His right arm instantly melted, and the rot spread even faster. In the blink of an eye, even his legs started rotting away. "What is this poison?" The red-haired man's expression changed drastically. He could no longer be bothered with killing Su Ming. Instead, with a single move, he wanted to return to his real body at the fastest speed possible. If he did so, then perhaps there would still be a possibility for him to keep his clone. Thinking of running, ruthlessness shone in Su Ming's eyes, but he knew that while this person was just a clone, he was still a true guard, and he also had the power of a lord of world planes. At that moment, fear had appeared in his heart due to the poison, or else once he used the power of world planes, it would have been incredibly difficult for Su Ming to fight back. It was especially so for the finger attack just now. If Su Ming had not used his physical body and cultivation base to fight against it at the same time, along with the rebound from the 5-direction seal in his body, it would have been incredibly difficult for him to withstand it. Without any hesitation, Su Ming seized the air in his bosom with his right hand, and a gourd immediately appeared in his hand. An eye instantly appeared on the gourd, and it stared straight at the red-haired man who was charging forward in the distance. Almost at the instant Jing, Nanzi's clone, was stared at by the eye on the gourd, his heart shuddered, and he felt as if his soul had been locked down. At that instant, Su Ming's cold voice reached his ears. "Treasured gourd, please kill him. Thank you for your concern. I've heard all of your words. Honestly speaking, I haven't been this sick for several years. I feel slightly better today, and I don't have a fever in the morning. I hope that I'll be better tomorrow. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation." Chapter 867. Treasured gourd, please kill him. At the instant Su Ming said those simple words, the eye on the gourd in his hand that was staring at the red-haired man blinked, and a wisp of green fog immediately came out of the gourd. A presence that caused Su Ming's heart to tremble instantly erupted from within it. With his own eyes, Su Ming saw an incredibly adorable baby appear within the fog. That baby was only the size of a palm, and in his hand was an even smaller sword. He rode on the green fog, and with a speed that even Su Ming could not see clearly, he appeared beside the red-haired man in the distance in the blink of an eye. Once he circled him once, the green fog became much fainter, and he swiftly returned to the gourd. All of this happened incredibly quickly. Only 2 or 3 breaths had passed since the baby left the gourd and disappeared. At that moment, the red-haired man in the distance was crushed. His head was completely separated from his body, and he did not even have the right to fight back before he crumbled to pieces. His body was reduced to a puddle of blood by the poison, and his soul and nascent divinity were destroyed by the gourd. Su-Ming sucked in a sharp breath. He might have had an incredibly high opinion of the gourd, but at that moment, he realized that he had still underestimated it. He did not expect that it would possess such terrifying might. If I used this gourd alone, perhaps it wouldn't be so shocking. This is related to the red-haired true guard being poisoned by my poisonous wasp. Su-Ming calmed down his emotions and analyzed the situation logically. It was also at that moment that an enraged roar came from the sealed region. At the same time that roar echoed in the air, Long Li, Tianlin, and Sun Kuan's shrill and weak groans could be heard. Su-Ming, you're Su-Ming. How dare you kill my clone? No matter where you go, I will definitely kill you. Su-Ming's expression remained as calm as ever. He turned around and ignored Jing Nanzi's roars. At that moment, his clone was no longer blocking his path, and it would not be difficult for him to leave this place. Not only will I kill you, I will also destroy your entire family. I will kill all of your descendants. Jing Nanzi's voice was still reverberating madly in the air. The booming sounds grew even more intense. It even sounded as if they were getting closer and closer. Su-Ming's footsteps came to a halt. What made him stop was not the endless red threads that had gathered at the exit before him for some unknown reason. Judging by the looks of it, they were the things that had chased after Su-Ming and the others previously. They had somehow come to this place, and the instant Su-Ming was about to go out, he immediately sensed the endless amount of red in his divine sense. However, this was not the reason why Su-Ming did not take that step forward. It was because Jing Nanzi had said that he would destroy his entire family. Destroy my entire family. What familiar words. There was once a person who said the same thing to me, and he died in the end. I hate it when other people say these words, Su-Ming mumbled softly. Not only will I destroy your entire clan, but I, Jing Nanzi, will also find your sect and destroy it. Only then will I be able to make up for your crime of killing my clone. Jing Nanzi's voice grew closer and closer, and a powerful, intimidating force spread into the surroundings with his voice. Su-Ming no longer moved forward. Instead, killing intent shone in his eyes, and he turned around to cast a glance at the sealed region. Destroy my entire clan and my sect. Since I can't leave this place within a short period of time, then I might as well try to destroy you. As Su-Ming let out a cold harumph, he swiftly moved back and appeared at the exit. His presence spread out from his body, and the red threads that were moving back and forth outside the exit, but did not notice him instantly, let out piercing screeches and charged towards him. The moment those red threads moved, they immediately caused the other red threads to move as well. In the blink of an eye, a dense and boundless sea of red threads charged towards Su-Ming like a huge wave that surged into the sky. Su-Ming charged towards the sealed region like a bolt of lightning. As he charged down a tunnel, the large amount of red threads surged towards him and chased after him without end. Tianlin, Long Li, Sun Kun, if the 3 of you are still alive, then hold back this true guard with everything you have. Spread out your presence and let me know where you are. There's a wave of red threads behind me. As Su-Ming moved forward, his voice echoed violently in all directions. At the instant his voice traveled through the air, Jing Nanzi, who was dressed in red armor and had a red helmet on his head and held a long red spear in his hand, threw it forward. Immediately, all the diamond-shaped scales at the center of Long Li's brows shattered. When they touched his blood, his body tumbled backwards and crashed into the stone wall behind him. Sun Kuan fell to the side at that moment. Blood trickled out of the corners of his mouth. His face was dull, and his chest was a bloody mess, as if someone had dug out his heart. There was also a big tree in the empty space. As its branches spread out, they sealed off all the tunnels leading out of the place. There's also a huge number of branches that were swiftly lashing towards Jing Nanzi like whips. The three of you are outstanding berserkers in the initial stage of World Plane Realm, especially you. You're a descendant of the Tian family that I didn't kill in the past, but I didn't expect that you would have reached World Plane Realm as well. Looks like sparing your life in the past was the right choice. After all, the Tian family's blood is one of the rare bloodlines that can fuse together with plants. This salve tree has been nourished quite well by you, Jing Nanzi said flatly as he looked at the big tree that was Tian Lin with a cold gaze. Jing Nanzi, even if I die today, I will make you pay. Tian Lin's face appeared on the big tree. His heart was filled with an unwillingness to admit defeat. This was not part of his plan. None of this should have happened. Besides them, the Duke of Crimson Flame from the alien race should have also been sent to fight against Jing Nanzi. Only by doing so could Jing Nanzi be killed, and he would be able to vent his hatred. However, the development of the situation was completely different from what he had planned. This caused Tian Lin to not only be unwilling to admit defeat, but also to feel regret and a sense of absurdity. I've been preparing for so many years. I've been searching for a chance, and after much difficulty, I finally found a chance to kill Jing Nanzi, but because I fainted, Yishin Tong woke up. He summoned Jing Nanzi based on the will I left in him. This isn't the right time. Could it be that even the heavens are taking care of Jing Nanzi and allowing him to escape from this disaster? Tian Lin descended into madness, and the whip before him howled. Bang, 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 bang. Jing Nanzi swept the long spear in his hand and thrust it forward. With a bang, the air around him distorted and shattered. Even the big tree that was Tian Lin had a large amount of cracks on it. It was also at this moment that Su Ming's voice reached them. Tian Lin's body returned to human form from his tree form. At that moment, he was staggering backwards, and when he heard Su Ming's words, his eyes immediately turned bloodshot. As his presence spread out, he charged towards Jing Nanzi. Long Li struggled up from the ground. When blood trickled down the corners of his mouth, a powerful hatred appeared in his dull eyes. He had only been one step away from obtaining his world stone, but he had been interrupted by the true guard who had suddenly appeared, causing all his efforts to be in vain. Right then, they were in a life and death situation. Tian Lin's strength, the difference of one realm, and the advantage of being able to execute the power of world planes at will without having to worry about using up all his energy caused the three of them to only be able to handle this battle with great difficulty. And this was because Long Li was already at the peak of the initial stage of World Plane Realm and was only half a step away from middle stage. Once Tian Lin turned over his physical body, he could bring forth a power that was slightly stronger than Long Li's, but he still had not reached the middle stage of World Plane Realm. Besides, Sun Kuan had a large number of enchanted treasures, which was why the battle had lasted until then. I'll fight. If I don't, then I'll die. Long Li roared. He lifted his right hand and tapped a few spots on his chest. The power of world planes erupted from his body. At the same time, a black horn crawled out of the top of his skull. Scales appeared on his face, and in the blink of an eye, Long Li turned into a human-shaped beast. As he roared, he charged towards Jing Nanzi. Not too far away, Sun Kuan bit down on the tip of his tongue. A large amount of red appeared in his eyes, and as his midget body trembled, he let out a piercing screech. That sound contained an astonishing penetrative power. At the same time he roared, his body started trembling violently and rapidly withering away. It was as if all his life force and essence had turned into nutrients for that piercing screech. Once that piercing screech appeared, Jing Nanzi's body froze in midair. A buzzing sound instantly rang out in his head, as if sharp needles had pierced into him. It turned into a buzzing sound in his ears. It was also at that moment that Long Li's half-human, half-beast clawed at Jing Nanzi's chest. Tian Lin closed in on him with a twisted expression, and branches grew out of his fingertips to drill into Jing Nanzi's body like drills. During that instant, Buzzing whistles came from one of the beehive holes by the side. In the blink of an eye, Su Ming rushed out of the beehive hole. He had followed the group's presences and arrived at that moment. This could be considered the first time the four of them had gathered together once again after they had split up, but they did not have time to catch up. Right when Su Ming flew out, the hole behind him let out a bang, and the red thread wave erupted from the hole like a volcano erupting. I know the place where the Duke of Crimson Flame is sealed. Take me with you. I'll show you the way. Sun Kuan was the first to speak in a shrill voice. Almost at the same time he spoke, Su Ming closed in on him in a flash, grabbed him, and charged towards one of the holes in the beehive. Tianlin and Long Li did not hesitate. Without caring about the injuries in their bodies, they followed behind him. As for Jing Nanzi, Sun Kuan's strange sound had pierced his head, and Long Li had attacked him with everything he had. Tianlin had attacked in a frenzy, but his level of cultivation was high, and he soon recovered. Before the red threads could pounce on him, he charged towards the spot where Su Ming and the others were about to leave. However, almost at the instant he moved, Su Ming turned around before he stepped into the hole and threw out an item with his right hand. 8 colors circulated in the air. Naturally, it was Su Ming's 8-colored crystal. The moment it appeared, it shattered with a bang, turning into a power that could freeze the soul, and Jing Nanzi could not help but freeze for a moment. The price of this pause was that the boundless red silk tide instantly spread out and covered him. Fighting against the demon of illness was truly tiring. Sometimes when he thought about how good it would be if he could become a cultivator, he would just need to circulate his cultivation base in his body to kill all the viruses and other such things. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 868. However, it did not matter whether it was Su Ming or the others. All of them knew clearly that even they could avoid or escape from these red threads in the chaos. Much less this true guard who was stronger than them and had reached the middle stage of World Plane Realm. They could only trap him for a moment, but not for long. He would definitely rush out and chase after them. Time was precious at that moment, and they could not afford to waste even a single moment. To save his life, Sun Kuan quickly told Su Ming about the paths he had discovered while he was being held by Su Ming. With Sun Kuan, who had once gone to the core of the seal, leading the way, Su Ming charged through the tunnels in the beehive at full speed. Long Li and Tianlin were heavily injured, but they gritted their teeth and followed behind him. After all, if they fell behind, they would die once Jing Nanzi caught up to them. The time it takes for an incense stick to burn passed by quickly. As Su Ming continued moving forward at full speed with Sun Kuan in his hand, he heard a muffled boom in the distance. Jing Nanzi's incredibly domineering pressure also spread out with a bang from a distance. Su Ming's expression changed slightly, and he moved even faster. Long Li and Tianlin's expressions turned even darker and paler. The two of them knew that Jing Nanzi had broken free and was probably chasing after them at that moment. The core is right in front of us. If we move forward through this tunnel, we'll be less than 5,000 feet away. Sun Kuan's face was bloodless. As he spoke in a shrill voice, Su Ming looked as if he had turned into a gust of wind. Whoosh! Su Ming might have looked as if he had warped through the distance of 5,000 feet. But in truth, his body had shot through the air at that extreme speed. Once he rushed out, he appeared in an incredibly vast karst cave in the tunnel. This karst cave was extremely large, and it covered an area of over 100 kilometers. At the center of the cave was an expanse of dark violet lava. Shockingly, a skeleton that had 3 swords pierced through its body was immersed in the center of the lava. Almost at the same time, Su Ming arrived. A muffled wave of heat crashed into his face. If he breathed in it, he would feel as if his entire body was about to burn. Su Ming stood in midair and swept his gaze across the area. When his eyes landed on the skeleton in the purplish-black magma, Long Li and Tianlin turned into 2 long arcs and charged out for the tunnel behind him. They stood beside Su Ming, and once they saw everything around them, they sucked in sharp breaths. Duke of Crimson Flame. This skeleton must belong to Marquis Crimson Flame, an outsider grand cultivator who has been sealed here for countless years. As Long Li and Tian Lin stared at the purplish-black magma skeleton, Su Ming's pupils shrank and his heart trembled. Ever since he came to the sealed region, he had felt gazes on him multiple times. At the instant he looked towards the skeleton and met its gaze, that feeling of being watched appeared once again. This feeling was incredibly strong, so strong that Su Ming could immediately tell that not only did the gaze staring at him from the outside belong to the skeleton, even now, the gaze of the skeleton that was looking at him seemed to contain a vast amount of life force, causing his heart to tremble and making him feel as if he was in a myriad of illusions. Tian Lin clutched his chest. Blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. His voice was urgent as he said, "The only way for us to fight against Jingnan Zi is to break all the seals on this great foreign race cultivator. But how are we supposed to completely open the seal on this outsider?" Su Ming had let go of Sun Kuan's hand previously, and at that moment, he had recovered some of his cultivation base due to the power of the world planes in this place. "I know. If we take out the world stone, we can make the seal in this place lose its balance, and it will shatter completely. It's a pity that I was heavily injured by the True Guard when I took it out just now, or else the seal would have shattered a long time ago. I remember the location of the world stone. I need time. If you can hold Jingnan Zi back for some time, I have 7/10 of a chance that I can take the world stone and make the seal shatter," Long Li said hoarsely while panting violently. "Are you sure you have 7/10 a chance?" Tian Lin gritted his teeth and turned his head around to look at Long Li. Even Sun Kuan and Su Ming looked over in silence. Long Li sucked in a deep breath and said in a low voice, "We're already at this point in time. How can I speak carelessly? If we don't kill that True Guard Jingnan Zi, then we'll all die. If I say that I have 7/10 of a chance, then I will definitely have 7/10 of chance. All right, Brother Su, Brother Sun, we're all people that Jingnan Zi wants to kill. It'll be difficult for any of us to escape alone, but I swear that if we have the chance to kill Jingnan Zi, then all his belongings will belong to you. I won't take any of them." As Tian Lin spoke, Jingnan Zi's low roar came from the tunnel not too far away. Judging by the direction of the sound, it was not too far away from them. Su Ming's expression was grave. At that moment, he had no other choice but to do this. He nodded. As Sun Kuan laughed wryly, he quickly brought out some medicinal cores and placed them in his mouth, seizing the time he had to exercise his breathing. "Brother Long, once Jingnan Zi appears later, the three of us will risk our lives to stop him, but you have to be quick. We can only hold you back for the time it takes for 2 incense sticks to burn. This is our limit. If you still haven't succeeded by then..." Tian Lin's words came to a halt. Long Li sucked in a deep breath and spoke in a grave voice. "The time it takes for 2 incense sticks to burn is enough. If we still haven't succeeded, then it will be the heavens who will destroy us." At that moment, Su Ming's heart trembled. He immediately took a few steps backwards, and a loud bang came from the tunnel in the distance. Countless shattered stones shot out in the midst of that bang and charged towards Su Ming and the others. At the same time, a ghastly presence came to devour them like an ancient ferocious beast with its mouth wide open. Tian Lin's expression changed. He gritted his teeth and turned into a big tree. As his branches danced madly in the air, countless shadows manifested and charged forward while covering the sky and earth. Sun Kuan bit the tip of his tongue and coughed up a mouthful of blood. At the same time, his blood turned into a blood-red runic symbol in midair. A thick, bloody stench spread out from that runic symbol, and it was surrounded by a layer of blood fog. As it rushed forward, Sun Kuan let out a piercing howl. The dwarf shuddered, and a large amount of small items fell out from various parts of his body. Among these small items were jade pendants, crystal pearls, and quite a large number of jade color plates. There were even a few wooden carvings among them. There were hundreds of them, and once Sun Kuan threw them out, they turned into hundreds of long arcs that charged forward. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. As he retreated, He lifted his right hand, and the killing sword appeared in his hand. His eyes sparkled brilliantly, and he circulated his cultivation base. The power of his physical body erupted with a vast amount of power, and he turned into a ray of sword light that charged forward. The three of them attacked at the same time to fight against the murderous presence coming from the red light. At the same time, Longley retreated swiftly, and, with a flash, he crawled into one of the holes in the beehive by the side. Then, based on his memories, he charged towards the location of the secondary core's world stone. You should be proud that you managed to force me to break the first seal on my body, you ants. An aloof and chilling voice traveled into the air, clearly as Su Ming and the other two attacked at the same time. Immediately after, three blood-red figures charged towards Su Ming and the other two from the red light. Bang, bang, bang. Tian Lin was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. Once he was touched by the red figure, he coughed up blood, and half of his tree body shattered. He turned into his nascent divinity once again before he tumbled backwards. The sword in Su Ming's hand swept towards the red figure, and a vast amount of power swiftly spread out from it. That power brought with it a destructive presence, and just as it was about to rush into Su Ming's body, the light from the five-direction seal instantly spread out. At the same time it fought against that destructive power, the seemingly ordinary robe on Su Ming's body shuddered and turned into the sacred constellation robe to fight against that destructive power. The two supreme treasures, along with Su Ming's own physical power, allowed him to maintain his balance and retreat even as he coughed up blood. He also swung his arm, and for the first time in the barren lands of divine essence, his statue of the god of berserkers appeared before him. It lifted its fist and hurled a punch towards the red figure. Besides Su Ming and Tian Lin, Sun Quan had spared no effort in using all his enchanted treasures to self-destruct at the instant he came into contact with the red shadow. The ripples spreading out from the red runic symbol even caused the space around him to show signs of shattering. He swiftly retreated, but at the instant he did so, a long red spear shot through the air with a hum and appeared right in front of him. At the instant Sun Quan's pupils shrank. The long spear pierced the center of his brows and went straight through. Sun Quan shuddered, and his body instantly withered, as if all his flesh and blood had been absorbed by the long spear. In just the span of 2 breaths, he turned into a dried-up corpse. At the same time, the red figure in front of Su Ming and Tian Lin disappeared, and Jing Nanzi, dressed in red armor, walked out from before Sun Quan. He seized the long spear and slowly pulled it out from Sun Quan's head before looking at Su Ming and Tian Lin. One of you is a rat that I did not kill out of kindness in the past, and the other is a person who has committed an unforgivable crime for daring to harm my clone. I will let you choose how you want to die. Jing Nanzi, who was dressed in red armor, had a blood-red helmet, and held the long crimson spear in his hand, said in a ghastly voice. There were wisps of red threads flowing within the long red spear in his hand, and they crawled into Jing Nanzi's arm through his hand. Those wisps of blood were Sun Quan's flesh and blood essence. At that moment, once they entered Jing Nanzi's body, his presence increased at an astonishing speed. Some of the injuries he had suffered just then also completely recovered at that instant. When his gaze swept past Su Ming's statue of the god of berserkers, he shrank in a barely noticeable manner. Clearly, this was something he had never seen before. However, there were far too many criminals in the barren lands of divine essence, and there were countless divine abilities and arts, which was why he only casted a brief glance. Su Ming's expression was grave. He leaped up and stood on the statue's shoulder. He stared at Jing Nanzi, and his grip on the killing sword in his hand tightened. Suddenly, a faint voice echoed in Su Ming's ears. My ally, do you still remember the 5th Abyss Pact? I am the Duke of Crimson Flame from the Surging Indulgers, and I am willing to obey the 5th Abyss Pact. I only ask that you resurrect the 1 million members of my tribe who died in battle in the past, but left behind the Abyss Soul Flag. That voice echoed in the air, but Tian Lin and Jing Nanzi did not notice it. Clearly, Only Su Ming could hear it. Today, I will write one chapter. To be continued. If you like this work, please come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 869. Su Ming was momentarily stunned. That voice was weak, but it had managed to pierce through his heart and reach him. The fact that the person had called himself the Duke of Crimson Flame shocked Su Ming greatly. My ally from the Sacred Abyss Builders, do not panic. You're the only one who can hear my voice. We will talk about the Fifth Abyss Pact later. Right now, I will help you get through this difficult situation. The power of the seal is still around, and I do not have a single shred of cultivation base in my body. I cannot move even a single inch. Come to me. Come on my side. Only by doing so can I protect you. The faint voice echoed in Su Ming's ears. A barely noticeable glint appeared in his eyes, but he did not turn his head back to look at the skeleton in the purplish-black magma. It was also at that moment that Tianlin wiped off the blood at the corners of his mouth and started laughing loudly in a shrill voice. As he laughed, a wave of madness and grief appeared in his voice. It was as if this grief had been suppressed for thousands of years, and it had erupted at that moment. If I had to choose how I would die, then I would choose to die with you. Tianlin lifted his right hand and pressed it against his chest. When he did so, Su Ming immediately saw the physical body in Tianlin's nascent divinity instantly shatter. This meant that he had completely given up on his physical body. At that moment, all he had was his nascent divinity. This pure nascent divinity was not something Tianlin had obtained through training alone. Instead, he had obtained it by executing the art to reverse the flow of his nascent divinity to his physical body. It might have become much stronger, but it was the same as burning his own potential to stimulate his own light. It could not last for long. Before long, Tianlin's nascent divinity would no longer have a physical body to support it. He had already chosen to die. This was his choice. Even if he had to die, he wanted to die by burning himself. Even if he had to die, he wanted to die in a fight against his mortal enemy, Jing Nanzi. Ancestors of the Tian family, I, Tianlin, am an unfilial junior. Today, I will use my death to take revenge. Ancestors, please protect me in heaven so that I can kill this person. An indomitable presence erupted from Tianlin's body. The surface of his nascent divinity swiftly turned brown like tree bark. In the blink of an eye, his body looked as if he had turned into a tree man. At the same time, numerous branches grew out of the tips of his index fingers and spread out. At the same time, his body was also filled with the power of plants and vegetation. His nascent divinity has completely fused with his tree. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He could tell Tianlin's current state and madness. This was a person who did not care about death. This was the strongest power he could muster in his life after he had one foot in the grave. Jing Nanzi stood in midair with his red spear in hand. His pupils narrowed slightly, and a bloodthirsty, fighting spirit appeared in his eyes. A faint smile appeared at the corners of his lips under his helmet. Back then, I spared your life because I sensed that the bloodline in your body was the richest among the Tian bloodline. It's close to returning to its ancestral state. Jing Nanzi swept the spear in his right hand forward. Boom, boom, boom. The space in front of Jing Nanzi shattered, and the shattering spread out to form an invisible storm in space. It distorted the space and rammed toward Tianlin. Tianlin let out a loud bellow. His cultivation base seemed to be burning and seething, and his speed increased by several folds. The power of his might even clashed head-on against Jing Nanzi. Bang, bang, bang. The two of them fought several times in midair. Every single time they fought, Tianlin's body would tremble and rumble. There were quite a number of places on his body that had been torn to pieces, but they would soon recover completely. After all, his nascent divinity had fused with the tree, and the life force of a tree was usually incredibly tenacious and incredibly vast. Because of that, even if Tianlin was injured, he could instantly return to the peak of his condition. With the power of those who had attained completion in the initial stage of Whirlplane Realm, once he fused with the tree, he could display a terrifying power equivalent to those in the middle stage of Whirlplane Realm. He could fight against Jing Nanzi on equal grounds for a short period of time. At the instant violent tremors spread through the area once again, Jing Nanzi threw his head back and laughed loudly with the long spear in his hand. "Good, child of the Tian family. As expected, you didn't disappoint me. The Tian bloodline is incredibly famous in true Sacredine world. If your ancestors' branch hadn't betrayed your family and failed, they wouldn't have been imprisoned in the barren lands of divine essence." A brilliant light shone in Jing Nanzi's eyes. As he spoke in a ghastly voice, he turned into a long arc and instantly appeared before Tianlin. Bang! The space between the two of them shattered, and a powerful force of impact swept through the area, stirring up booming sounds that swept in all directions. Tianlin's expression was dark. He did not say a single word. Clearly, what Jing Nanzi had said was not a secret to him. He rushed forward and started fighting once again. Su Ming stood on his statue of the god of berserkers. The force of impact that came tumbling backwards lifted his hair. As Su Ming's eyes sparkled, he tightened his grip on the killing sword in his hand before slowly relaxing it. He did not rush into the battle, but neither did he retreat to the Duke of Crimson Flame's side like he had said. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Su Ming would not choose the Duke of Crimson Flame's method. After all, the hearts of men were sinister, and the slightest carelessness would cause him to be doomed eternally. Su Ming stood calmly with the killing sword in his hand. The shape of a bright sun gradually appeared in his left eye, and a crescent moon appeared in his right eye, causing his eyes to be filled with a hazy air. At the same time, stars appeared in Su Ming's heart. Illusion of stars, sun, and moon. At that moment, Su Ming cast this illusion on Jing Nanzi while Jing Nanzi and Tianlin were fighting intensely against each other. It was impossible for anyone to fight against this illusion. If they were distracted for the slightest moment, they would immediately fall into an illusion. Almost the instant Su Ming executed the illusion of star, sun, and moon, Jing Nanzi, who was fighting against Tianlin, felt his heart tremble. It was as if some sort of great danger was about to appear, and it caused his eyes to sparkle. However, before he could investigate the source of this danger, suddenly, Jing Nanzi, Su Ming let out a loud shout and leaped up from his statue of the god of berserkers. His voice was like thunder, and it even contained the divine ability of the god of berserkers' roar, causing it to stir up an endless amount of echoes in the limited karst cave. Jing Nanzi, Jing Nanzi, Jing Nanzi. These echoes filled the area. In the blink of an eye, they swiftly fused together to turn into a roar that sounded like the might of heaven itself. Jing Nanzi. That roar shook Tianlin's ears to the point that booming sounds rang in his ears. Jing Nanzi's heart was so shaken that he even became absent-minded for a moment, as if his soul had been called out, causing him to instinctively look towards Su Ming, who had spoken. What he saw was not Su Ming's face, but the light from the sun and moon reflecting off each other. At the instant he saw the sun and moon, Jing Nanzi had a feeling as if he had turned into a star. At the instant this feeling appeared, a bang immediately rang out in his head. When everything before his eyes became clear again, he saw a brilliant smile, a gentle gaze, and a hand that had been stretched towards him. The palm lines on that hand were incredibly rough, but made that hand look warm and sturdy enough for a person to rely on it. Big brother. Jing Nanzi was momentarily stunned. He stared blankly at the tall and built young man who looked to be in his 20s standing before him. That young man had a huge sword strapped to his back, and at that moment, he had stretched out his right hand and placed it before Jing Nanzi. Little brother, with your big brother here, why are you crying? Train properly, and in the future, the two of us will wander the galaxy together. Jing Nanzi saw himself. He was a boy who was only 12 or 13 years old. He had short hair and was thin, and tears were falling from his eyes. He remembered that this was him from many years ago. This was the most precious memory in his memories, and it was the memory of his big brother. However, this was also the memory he did not want to remember the most. Yet at that moment, it had appeared before him in such a realistic manner. A man must be upright and upright. Little brother, you have a dark personality, and this is something I don't like, but with me around, one of these days, I will make you change your attitude. Jing Nanzi's ears echoed with his big brother's voice. The scene before his eyes changed, and he saw himself growing up. However, the dark look on his face was incredibly great, and it was difficult for it to disappear. Only when he faced his big brother would that dark look turn into a bright smile. I'm his big brother. He made a mistake, and I will pay with my life. As Jing Nanzi looked at the memories, the smile on his face froze, and it turned into grief and anger. This was the turning point in his life. This was a memory that changed his entire life. It was a memory that he would not be able to forget even if he died. In this memory, he lost his big brother. He saw himself kneeling on the ground with his body trembling. He saw his big brother standing before him with a long sword in his hand. He saw an old man appear before him. The old man had a cold expression as he looked at his big brother. Behind the old man stood an even colder young woman. She was looking at Jing Nan with disgust. I, Chun Jing, am his big brother. He's still young, so I'll die in his place. Jing Nanzi saw his big brother turn around and flash him a gentle smile. In that smile, he saw the sword in his big brother's hand sink into his neck. Jing Nanzi roared madly as blood flowed out. Since your big brother is using his life as an apology, I'll let this matter go. Jing Nanzi's body trembled. He could not help but let out a shrill howl. This was the most painful scene in his memory, and he did not want to recall it. He wanted to bury it in the depths of his heart, but now it had resurfaced, and he saw it once again. He also saw himself kneeling before his big brother's corpse after the old man and the young man left. After a few days of silence, his hair turned red, and a monstrous, murderous aura spread out from his body. He saw that there was no longer a hint of emotion in his eyes. There was only bloodthirst and madness. Big brother, I'm with you. I'm you. From now on, I'm not Chun Nan anymore. I'm Jing Nan. As Jing Nanzi laughed brokenly, endless pain traveled through his body. The pain was both physical and internal. The intense pain caused all the memories before his eyes to shatter. When everything became clear again, he was still in the karst cave. Before him was Tian Lin, who was unleashing his full power and continuously attacking Jing Nanzi's body. By the looks of it, the blood in his mouth had been caused by Tian Lin's attacks. Chapter 870. Su Ming's pupil shrank. He had only cast the illusion of star, sun, and moon on two people. The first was Tian Lin, and the second was Jing Nanzi. Both of them had the same reaction when they were struck by this art. The most precious memory in their hearts, or rather, the one they did not want to recall the most, would be dug out forcefully and appear before them, making them suffer that pain once again. During this process, they would lose control of their minds because the ones attacking their minds would not be anyone else but themselves. As the caster, Su Ming could see everything in the other person's memories that they did not want others to know. In fact, he would even feel as if he was experiencing it himself, such as the scene just now. It had caused Su Ming's heart to tremble. He had seen Jing Nanzi devour his older brother's corpse. Physical injuries can be healed with medicinal cores and can be healed by circulating one's cultivation base. But injuries to the mind are akin to injuries to the soul. Unless one forgets it, the only way to heal it is through the passage of time. My illusion of star, sun, and moon doesn't injure a person's physical body. In fact, it can't even be considered an injury. It lures out the most fragile memories in a person's heart and turns them into a dark brand. It's like tearing open a scar that has been sealed for a long time, making the person's soul ache. At the same time understanding appeared in Su Ming's eyes, he saw Jing Nanzi throwing his head back and letting out a shrill roar. He yanked off his helmet, revealing his long, blood-red hair and his strangely enchanting face. However, at that moment, his face was pale, and his eyes were bloodshot. He coughed up a huge mouthful of blood and staggered backwards. Tian Lin's crazed attacks were not the only reason he coughed up blood, but also the pain in his heart, along with the memories that seemed to have happened just yesterday. Brother, Jing Nanzi kept on retreating. There was pain in his eyes, and his body trembled. Before him, Tian Lin had a crazed killing intent on his face. He was unleashing all of his divine abilities without any regard for the consequences. He was using all of his arts and transcendent treasures with the greatest destructive power to attack Jing Nanzi as quickly as he could. Boom, 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 boom. Jing Nanzi continued retreating with blood trickling down the corners of his mouth. There was a dazed look in his eyes, along with pain and bewilderment. With a face filled with madness, Tian Lin brought out his full strength and rammed his fists against Jing Nanzi's body. Do you think I don't know why you didn't kill me in the past? That's because the innate divine ability of my Tian bloodline is extremely rare among cultivators. It can perfectly fuse with plants and has the chance to condense rare growth armor. You didn't kill me because you covet my growth armor. You covet its strength, but you can't get it from the Tian family in true Sacredine world. That's why you set your sights on my family in the barren lands of divine essence. You didn't kill me because the purity of my bloodline surpasses the forefathers, and because I'm the one in the Tian family who has the highest chance of forming growth armor. This Luo Sha tree is the one you gifted to my Tian clan's first-generation ancestor. It has been passed down to this day. What you need is precisely the Luo Sha tree's growth armor. In order to kill you, I knew your plan, but I still fused with it. Only then could I unleash my greatest power. Tian Lin bellowed, and the branches of the trees in front of him danced about crazily. Booming sounds reverberated in the air as he retreated with Jing Nanzi. In the blink of an eye, they crashed into a rock wall at the side. Boom! Shattered stones flew into the air. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath in the distance. The sun and moon in his eyes disappeared, and he tightened his grip around the killing sword in his hand. His eyes sparkled brilliantly, and he was just about to attack when his pupils suddenly shrank. Have you had enough? Jing Nanzi, who had half of his body buried into the rock wall, lifted his head at that moment. There was still blood at the corners of his mouth, but the dazed look in his eyes had already disappeared, replaced by a ghastly and cold look. Almost at the instant he said those words, Jing Nanzi lifted his right hand and seized Tian Lin's arm, which was hurling a punch towards him. He yanked it up and flung it forward. With it, Tian Lin's body started shuddering, and a large amount of crystalline light erupted from his body at that moment. That crystalline light was the essence of his nascent divinity, and at that moment, half of it had spread out. As Jing Nanzi flung him again, Tian Lin's body crashed into the ground not too far away with a bang. Tian Lin struggled to his feet, and anguish appeared on his face. Despair appeared on his face. He had already executed his full strength, but he was still not Jing Nanzi's opponent. I've underestimated you once again. Jing Nanzi cracked his neck and walked out of the sunken rock wall. He did not look at Tian Lin, but instead looked at Su Ming with a ghastly gaze that was like that of a poisonous snake. You have that poisonous wasp with astonishing poison, that mysterious gourd, and an illusion divine ability that could even trap me. You're very powerful. If you had reached the level of a lord of a world plane, then even if you were just in the initial stage of world plane realm, I would still not be your opponent. But now you must die. Thick killing intent appeared in Jing Nanzi's eyes. It had been many years since he had wanted to kill someone as much as he did at that moment. Su Ming destroying his clone had only angered him, but what Su Ming had done just then could no longer be described as angering him. He had crossed Jing Nanzi's bottom line. Jing Nanzi moved and instantly disappeared without a trace. Almost at the same time, Su Ming's expression changed. He warped as well, and when he reappeared, he was already right in front of Tian Lin. Almost at the same time, Su Ming moved, Jing Nanzi took a step forward from the space before him. He did not execute any complicated divine abilities and simply threw a punch at Su Ming. "You're so young, but you're quite cunning. You actually managed to tell that I wanted to kill that Tian brat first." Su Ming could not let Jing Nanzi kill Tian Lin so easily. Between the two of them, Tian Lin was the one with the greatest combat prowess. If Tian Lin lived, they might not have any hope of winning this battle, but if Tian Lin died, then this battle would become a hopeless one. Su Ming stood between Tian Lin and Jing Nanzi. At the same time he swung the killing sword in his hand forward, it crashed against Jing Nanzi's fist. Su Ming might have looked as if he was fighting back, but in truth, he did not have any intention to counterattack. He was just blocking the attack. Boom! Su Ming's right hand, which held the killing sword, was torn apart. The layer of light from the five-direction seal manifested around him, and Han Mountain Bell appeared in the five-direction seal. At the same time, it let out bell chimes, the small snake, the candle dragon's roar, its gaze that was filled with a desire to capture souls, and the sudden appearance of the nine-headed dragon's body on Han Mountain Bell instantly turned into a force of resistance that turned into a deafening boom that reverberated between Su Ming and Jing Nanzi. Su Ming still had the sacred constellation robe on him. It might be difficult for him to bring out his full power with this treasure, but its defense was still there. With the sacred constellation robe, Su Ming still coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood. With a whoosh, he grabbed Tian Lin and retreated. As he retreated, Su Ming activated the power of destiny with his left hand. At the same time he pointed at Jing Nanzi through the air, the poisonous wasp shot out from his sleeve and charged towards him. Jing Nanzi let out a cold harumph, but his heart trembled. After all, he was in the middle stage of World Plane Realm, and Su Ming was only in Earth Cultivation Realm. However, this sort of Earth Cultivation Realm was so difficult to deal with. Jing Nanzi was about to chase after him when he immediately noticed that the laws around him had changed, as if time was affecting him and wanting to reverse itself. At that instant, a sense of danger filled the air. Jing Nanzi focused his attention and pointed at the air beside him. Layers of ripples appeared in a spot in the air, and the venomous wasp was forced to reveal itself. However, at the instant Jing Nanzi was about to point at it, the wasp disappeared without a trace with a whoosh. A glint appeared in Jing Nanzi's eyes. When he turned his head around to look at Su Ming, who was retreating, a strange light appeared in his eyes. Jing Nanzi lifted his right hand and seized the air with his fingers. A dark light shone in his eyes as he spoke in a low voice. "The laws of this place are fire, and the laws of this place are blood. With the seal of divine essence, I, Jing Nanzi, will verify my path to World Plane Realm. In this 100,000 feet, I will seal off speed, healing, physical power, the might of enchanted treasures, and the circulation of my cultivation base." As he spoke, it was as if each of his words contained a supreme will. It was as if his words were a law that could decide the changes and operations of the world within a certain area. It was especially so when he said that he would seal off speed, healing, physical power, the might of enchanted treasures, and the circulation of his cultivation base. At the instant these 5 words appeared, Su Ming's speed of retreating immediately disappeared, as if he had lost all speed. At the same time, the healing in Tian Lin's body came to a halt. A large part of his injuries were torn apart and worsened, and he could no longer recover. Soon after, Su Ming could clearly sense that his physical body had lost all its strength. The connection between the enchanted treasures around him had also been cut off from his mind, as if he could no longer control them. In fact, even his cultivation base had become so stiff that he could not circulate it. The complete power of world planes has gathered together divine essence, and with the seal of divine essence, he can forcefully interfere with the operations of the world, replacing the will of the world in that area. He can reach a state where his words will become law, and the laws in this place will become his will, and the laws will become his will. There are not many among the lords of world planes who can do this. He has the seal of divine essence, and his words will become law. He was just toying with us just now, Tianlin said in anguish. Jing Nanzi pulled back his right hand and looked at Su Ming coldly. As he took a step forward, he closed in on Su Ming, and a life-threatening sense of danger swiftly enveloped him. Su Ming's pupil shrank, and a sharp glint shone in his eyes. This person had sealed everything, but he could not seal his soul. If worse came to worst, he could just give up on his physical body and flee with his soul. Yet at that moment, Brother Su, I thank you for helping me. If I form the growth armor after I die, you can take it. That is my gift to you. When Tianlin suddenly spoke, he switched places with Su Ming, and with a bang, his nascent divinity started burning, along with the shadow of the big tree. Jing Nanzi, even if I die, I will self-destruct to make you pay. Madness appeared in Tianlin's eyes, and he chose to self-destruct. Once he pushed Su Ming away, Tianlin's entire body turned into a piercing sun. That light instantly illuminated everything in the karst cave, drowning out Jing Nanzi, whose expression was dark and whose expression was changing. Boom! A deafening boom stirred up an endless amount of echoes, sweeping up Tianlin's shattered body in the presence of death, causing Su Ming to fall backwards and land beside the Duke of Crimson Flame Skeleton. Half of his body even sank into the purplish-black magma. You're finally willing to come, ally of the sacred Abyss Builders. I bear no ill will. We came from the same homeland. If you like this work, I welcome you to give me a recommendation vote or a monthly vote. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 871. Booming sounds rose swiftly in the karst cave. Tianlin's body was torn to pieces, and the destructive power that was formed fused with the vast life force he had gained after fusing with the sifting sand tree spread out with a loud bang in all directions. Tianlin died. The karst cave trembled, and a large amount of shattered stones fell off. The ground and mountains could be seen shaking in the area. Half of Su Ming's body was submerged in the purplish-black magma. His face was pale as he looked at the scene before him. Sun Quan died. Tianlin died. As for Yi Shantong, since Jing Nanzi could come here, then his clone must have died as well. This Jing Nanzi has great power. Sun Quan and Tianlin died one after another. Do I really have to give up on this physical body and flee with my soul? As a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, the frail voice suddenly reached his ears once again. I bear no ill will. This is not the time for us to talk. Ally of the Sacred Abyss Builders, please help me stall for time. As long as I can force out the first sealed sword, I will help you. As long as I can force out the first sword, then killing this person will be easy, and I can also give you a serendipity. After all, we came from the same homeland. Time. Help me stall for time, so that you can stall for enough time. I will first give you a wisp of my physical power. At the instant the frail voice echoed in Su Ming's mind, he immediately sensed two waves of heat seeping through his feet from the purplish-black magma and surging into his body. That heat wave was filled with a vast presence. Once it surged into his body, it fused into his flesh, blood, and bones. It did not affect his level of cultivation, but was rapidly changing the structure of his physical body. This scene was similar to when Su Ming had absorbed the physical power from the stones several years ago. However, this time, he did not need to take the initiative to absorb it. The thick physical power surged into his body on its own. As Su Ming's physical body continued becoming stronger, the lingering sounds of booming sounds echoed in the karst cave before him. As a large amount of dust tumbled about, Jing Nanzi's dark voice spread out in all directions in the karst cave. The last member of the Tian family in the barren lands of divine essence has died in endless pain. This can be considered as me showing mercy. Jing Nanzi walked out slowly from the dust, and when he was only 1,000 feet away from Su Ming, he looked towards him. Now, it's your turn. Jing Nanzi's red hair fluttered in the wind. Even though there were many parts of his armor that were damaged, and there was even blood flowing out from the corner of his mouth, his eyes still shone brilliantly. If one was stared at by his gaze, one would immediately feel a piercing pain as if his gaze had materialized. As he spoke, Jing Nanzi seized the air with his right hand. Immediately, his long red spear appeared in a flash. Once he held it, he lifted his foot slowly and walked towards Su Ming at a moderate pace. You seem to hate the Tian bloodline very much. His flesh and blood were becoming stronger, and his absorption speed was also becoming faster, but strangely, no one would be able to see a single hint of it. This must be related to the Duke of Crimson Flame, who had used some unknown method to make it difficult for Jing Nanzi to see Su Ming's current condition. Hey, you're very curious. A hint of aloofness shone in Jing Nanzi's eyes. With one move, he charged towards Su Ming with the long spear in hand like a bolt of lightning. Yet right when he leaped up and was about to close in on Su Ming's eyes sparkled, and he spoke in a cold voice. Your older brother sacrificed his life for you in the past because you offended the Tian family of true Sacredine world, right? Is the girl beside the old man called Tian something? At the instant Su Ming said those words, Jing Nanzi's body appeared in midair with a flash. Once he stopped in midair, an incredibly thick killing intent appeared in his eyes as he stared at Su Ming coldly. It might have seemed normal, but Su Ming noticed that Jing Nanzi's breathing had clearly become rougher than before. Tian Lin's family belongs to the Tian family of true Sacredine world, which is also the family you offended in the past. Because of your offense, your older brother died, and you managed to escape death. From then on, the Tian family became the target of your revenge. When some of the members of the Tian family failed in their rebellion and a branch of their family was sent to the barren lands of divine essence, they became your prey. They were enslaved by you, and you continued killing them cruelly. In the end, you even left Tian Lin alive to be tormented by hatred and pain. If my guess is correct, the girl who offended you in the past should have some sort of connection with Tian Lin's line of descent. In fact, Tian Lin's line of descent might be the true direct line of descent in the Tian family. This so-called rebellion should have failed because someone from the branch of the family succeeded in usurping the throne. Su Ming originally would not have said so much, but with each breath he took, his body would become stronger, and the Duke of Crimson Flame's skeleton behind him would also have a higher chance of breaking the seal. As Su Ming's physical body continued becoming stronger, the bald crane woke up in his storage bag. With a single move, it flew out of his storage bag and crashed into the purplish-black magma. It was first momentarily stunned, then cautiously popped its head out of the magma not too far away. It looked at Su Ming, who was mostly submerged in the magma, then at Jing Nanzi, who was smiling coldly with a dark expression on his face in midair. The bald crane quickly shrank its head back. Yet when it shrank its head back, it suddenly saw the Duke of Crimson Flame by its side. With it, the bald crane immediately widened its eyes. In fact, even the Duke of Crimson Flame's empty eyes sparkled rapidly at that instant, as if he was staring at the bald crane. Jing Nanzi looked at Su Ming and said flatly, You spoke so slowly and said all these harsh words because you were waiting for the person named Long to take the World Stone and break the seal, right? Do you think that the seal is so easy to break? Even if the seal crumbles right now, so what? Even if your companion, Long Li, takes the World Stone, so what? Jing Nanzi's lips curled up into a cold sneer. He took a step forward and closed in on Su Ming. His words were spoken unhurriedly, but they crashed into Su Ming's heart like a thunderclap. These seals are just to confuse people's eyes. As long as the true seal isn't broken, that mighty cultivator of the alien race won't be able to bring out even a hint of his power. You want to use this to kill me? Derision appeared in Jing Nanzi's eyes. With a single move, he appeared in midair 200 feet away from Su Ming and swung the long spear in his hand at him. Buzz! The tip of the long spear instantly appeared before Su Ming, and an incredibly fierce, freezing aura instantly froze his entire body. In fact, even the purplish-black magma around him looked as if it had turned into freezing mud during that instant. Su Ming's pupils shrank. He did not stop the long spear from coming towards him. His body sank swiftly into the purplish-black magma, and he instantly disappeared, sinking completely into the purplish-black magma. Almost at the same time, Su Ming sank in. The long spear touched the purplish-black magma. Boom, boom, boom. 3 consecutive booms rang out, and the purplish-black magma exploded 3 times. The destructive power from the long spear surged madly into it, causing all the purplish-black magma to tumble backwards and splash everywhere. As the magma splashed everywhere, the Duke of Crimson Flame skeleton was submerged and could no longer be seen. Even after the bald crane transformed, it was difficult to find it. However, Su Ming had already turned into a long arc and rushed out into the distance as the magma filled the area. Jing Nanzi let out a cold harumph and turned around with the long spear in his hand. Yet at the instant he looked towards Su Ming, the karst cave in the sealed region started trembling viciously. Muffled booms came from the holes in the beehive, and it was as if everything in the depths of the underground was about to collapse. Cracking sounds immediately came from the walls of the beehive, as if the entire ruin had lost its support, and a large amount of cracks started appearing on it. When Su Ming saw this, his pupils shrank. There was only one explanation for this, and that was that Longley had succeeded. He had successfully taken down the World Stone, causing the rune in this place to lose its balance, and it started crumbling. However, Longley would definitely not come back to help. He was most likely fleeing outwards at that moment, intending to leave the seal that was about to collapse and be submerged. Very good. You've finally completely broken the seal at the perimeter. Only by doing so will I be able to kill you and stop the mighty cultivator of the alien race from waking up. Only then will I be considered to have done a great service. A smile appeared on Jing Nanzi's face. He moved, and a red shadow walked out of his body. Once it turned into his clone, it grinned and charged towards one of the holes in the beehive in the distance. Clearly, it was going to chase after Longley. In truth, I was also stalling for time and waiting for you to succeed. Now the game is over. As Jing Nanzi smiled, he took a step towards Su Ming. With it, a loud bang immediately rang out in Su Ming's heart. His first reaction was not to retreat, but to lift his left hand. Destiny's power was swiftly contained within it, and at the same time he changed the laws, he pushed forward. With it, he felt as if he had pressed his hand on water. A palm appeared out of nowhere before Su Ming. That palm drew an arc that contained some sort of trajectory and pushed against Su Ming's chest. However, at the instant it fell, Su Ming activated his power of destiny, causing the palm to pause for a moment. It was also that instant of pause that allowed Su Ming to activate his sacred constellation robe at full power. At the same time, Su Ming's arms, feet, legs, and even most of his body withered away. Only the spot on his chest where the palm had struck seemed normal, but in truth, it contained all of Su Ming's physical defenses in one spot. Boom! The sacred constellation robe on Su Ming's body fluttered violently. Once it negated part of the power, Su Ming tumbled backwards and coughed up blood nonstop. His body rapidly recovered, and in the blink of an eye, he returned to normal from his withered state. However, his face was stark pale. If a cultivator in the middle stage of world plane realm attacks at full power, it will be difficult for me to fight against him. Su Ming retreated swiftly. His breathing quickened, and his organs felt as if they were about to explode. His injuries were incredibly severe, and if it was not because his physical power had just been strengthened, it would have been difficult for him to withstand the attack. It would be a pity to kill you. Become my servant, and I will spare your life. Jing Nanzi's body appeared from the spot where he had pressed his palm against Su Ming's chest. He pulled his palm back and spoke arrogantly. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 872. Jing Nanzi looked at Su Ming and said flatly, "You have the power of Earth Realm and a physical body that is close to Heaven Realm. You also have many divine abilities, terrifying illusory arts, and an extraordinary mind. A normal powerful warrior in the initial stage of World Plane Realm will not be your opponent, unless they do not hesitate to use the power of World Planes to suppress you. Become my servant for 10,000 years, and I will fight for a chance for you to be free. If you refuse, then die. An aloof look shone in Jing Nanzi's eyes. As he spoke, he took a step toward Su Ming. A great, mighty pressure spread out from Jing Nanzi's body. At the same time it enveloped Su Ming, it made the pale-faced Su Ming stagger a few more steps back. Su Ming's expression was incredibly dark. He still had a poisonous wasp in his sleeve, but Jing Nanzi would definitely be on guard against it. Ally of the Sacred Abyss Builders, come to me. I have not completely forced out the sealed sword. I might have only forced out half of it, but as long as you are within 30 feet of me, I can guarantee your safety. When the frail voice reached Su Ming's ears, he swiftly retreated. Jing Nanzi let out a cold harumph, but did not chase after him. Instead, he lifted his right hand and flung the long spear in his hand. With a hum, the long spear turned into a long blood-red arc that charged toward Su Ming. At the same time, Su Ming moved back. He brought out the gourd. Treasured gourd, please kill me. Su Ming's voice was hoarse. At that moment, he was in a life-and-death crisis. When he moved back and spoke, green fog instantly rose from the gourd, and the palm-sized human manifested. With the fog in his hand, he held the small sword and charged towards the long spear. Boom! The impact swept outwards, and Su Ming used the momentum to retreat, but before he could retreat too far away, the air before him distorted. Jing Nanzi walked out in a bizarre manner and seized the top of Su Ming's skull with his right hand. Blood capillaries filled Su Ming's eyes. During that instant, he could clearly sense that the space around him seemed to have been locked down. The hand that seemed to be coming from the front felt as if it was coming from all directions, giving him a feeling that he could not dodge it. What was even more shocking was that the space around him had completely frozen. Su Ming threw his head back and let out a shrill howl. During that critical moment, he lifted his left hand swiftly and pushed his palm upwards. Then, he moved his right hand downwards and pressed his palm against the ground. Between the past and the future is destiny. The shadows of the purple-haired man and the white-haired baby appeared before Su Ming. As they swiftly overlapped with each other, they covered Su Ming's body. All of this might have seemed to have happened over a long period of time, but it happened in the blink of an eye. At the instant Jing Nanzi's right hand was less than 5 feet away from the top of Su Ming's skull, Su Ming's body changed, and what appeared before Jing Nanzi was a boy who looked to be only 14 or 15 years old. The boy had a head full of gray hair that reached his waist. This was naturally Su Ming's destiny transformation. As his destiny body appeared, the space around him distorted. He moved, and at the instant Jing Nanzi's palm came to seize him, he broke free of the dimension around him and retreated 100 feet away. A glint appeared in Jing Nanzi's eyes, and he looked towards Su Ming, who had changed into destiny. At that moment, Su Ming's gray hair danced in the air. When he lifted his head, a callous and merciless look appeared in his eyes. Even at that moment, Su Ming still had plenty of trump cards that he had yet to use, such as the 7 Abyssaline Death Seal and the welcoming of deities that were about to shatter. Su Ming did not choose to attack again. He knew the difference between them. Even if he changed into destiny, he still could not close the gap between their levels of cultivation. Without any hesitation, once Su Ming broke free of the dimension, he swiftly retreated. With his current form as destiny, he could control the flow of time. It could be said that if he ran, then even powerful warriors in the middle stage of World Plane Realm would find it incredibly troublesome to chase after him. At the instant he retreated and Jing Nanzi's pupils shrank slightly, Su Ming had already retreated several hundreds of feet away to a purplish-black magma. At the instant he stood there, the Duke of Crimson Flame's skeleton floated to the surface of the purplish-black magma beside him. The skeleton floated up on its own, causing Jing Nanzi, who was just about to give chase, to freeze in his footsteps. When he focused his attention and looked over, he immediately saw the red short sword that had been forced halfway out of the skull of the Duke of Crimson Flame skeleton. At the instant he saw this, Jing Nanzi's eyes went wide. Shock appeared on his face, and he put away all thoughts of toying with Su Ming. With a grave expression that had never appeared before on his face, he charged towards Su Ming like a bolt of lightning. As he closed in, he seized the air with his right hand, and the long red spear appeared in his hand. With an indescribable speed, he instantly closed in on Su Ming and thrust the spear forward. Boom! The tip of the spear stopped 30 feet away from Su Ming in the air. In the end, it sank another 5 feet before it could no longer move forward. Jing Nanzi's expression turned dark, and a hint of panic appeared in his eyes. He saw that Su Ming and the red short sword in the skull were slowly loosening up. By the looks of it, before long, it would be completely forced out of the body. Damn it, how could this be? The mighty cultivator of the alien race should be sleeping. It's impossible for him to wake up, but even if he's about to wake up, it's fine. The mighty cultivator of the alien race has been sealed for many years, and not a hint of his cultivation base remains in his body. Even if he recovers, he'll need a long time in the barren lands of divine essence. With a cold harumph, Jing Nanzi pulled back the long spear in his right hand and took a few steps back. He lifted his left hand and bit the tip of his finger, then swung it in front of him with his blood. In the past, the mighty cultivator of the alien race left behind a child seal. This child seal is something that all true guards must learn when they come to the barren lands of divine essence. I originally thought that I wouldn't have the chance to execute it while I was on duty, but I didn't expect that Jing Nanzi, would be able to execute this art today. As Jing Nanzi laughed coldly, he swung his left hand swiftly in front of him. In the blink of an eye, a blood-red circular rune appeared out of nowhere. He bit the tip of his tongue and coughed up a large mouthful of blood. That blood fell on the blood-red rune, causing it to shine with a piercing blood-red light. At the same time the rune appeared, a rune the size of Crimson Flame planet manifested in the endless, distorting ripples in the galaxy beyond the sealed region. The color of that rune was crimson, and it looked exactly the same as the rune Jing Nanzi had set up. This was a divine ability that all the people from the 4 great true worlds who were sent to keep a lookout over this place had to learn. There was only one use for this art, and that was to activate the great divine essence rune laid out by the 4 great true worlds in the barren lands of divine essence. That rune filled every single corner of the barren lands of divine essence. Even in the depths of the barren lands of divine essence, there were only a few places that could not be covered by the rune. All the other places were covered by the rune. There were many wondrous uses to this rune. Based on the different statuses of the true guards, they could obtain different levels of authority to control the rune of divine essence. Jing Nanzi did not have a lot of authority. He could only bring out the most basic power to strengthen the seal. At that moment, as the red rune beyond Crimson Flame Planet appeared, Jing Nanzi laughed ferociously in the sealed region within Crimson Flame Planet and pushed his left hand against the small red rune before him. Immediately, the rune charged towards Su Ming. At the instant it touched the space 30 feet away from Su Ming, a loud bang rang out. In the midst of that bang, the Duke of Crimson Flame's skeleton started trembling viciously. A red short sword was forced out of the top of his head. At that moment, it was shining with a piercing red light, as if it had obtained some sort of replenishment. It no longer loosened its grip, but instead crawled back into the skeleton. At the same time, as the red short sword sank into the skeleton, the protective area of 30 feet started continuously weakening. At that moment, there was only 20 feet left. Jing Nanzi's smile was ghastly. He had not encountered any danger during this expedition. At most, he had only lost one of his clones, but compared to the credit he was about to obtain, this was nothing. Besides, it was not as if he had not taken back his treasures, especially since he was incredibly tempted by the treasures on Su Ming's body. He had already treated them as his own. Su Ming looked at the rapidly shrinking defense around him. Before long, it would completely disappear. During this moment of danger, Su Ming had already made preparations to escape. Can you help this person break the seal? If you can, then hurry up and do it, or else come back and run with me, Su Ming suddenly said. His words were spoken so suddenly that Jing Nanzi was momentarily stunned. At that moment, the purplish-black magma beside Su Ming let out a bang, and a part of it turned into the bald crane. The bald crane was drenched in sweat. Clearly, it was so hot in the magma that it was almost suffocating. Once it returned to its original form, it immediately flapped its wings with a disheveled look on its face. Darn it all, it's so hot. I'm about to suffocate to death. The bald crane's appearance caused Jing Nanzi to frown. He lifted his left hand and pointed at the red rune. The rune shone again, and as it strengthened the seal, the area of defense before Su Ming was reduced to only 10 feet. As the bald crane screamed, it quickly retreated and glared at the red rune. When a hateful expression appeared on its face, it whipped its head around. Jing Nanzi was dumbstruck, and as shock appeared on his face, the bald crane grabbed the red short sword and the Duke of Crimson Flame's skeleton. It mumbled something under its breath, then held the short sword with both hands and stomped on the Duke of Crimson Flame's skull. With a bang, the Duke of Crimson Flame's eyes shone with a dark, black light. The short sword in his skull was yanked out by the bald crane. This scene not only stunned Jing Nanzi, even Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. He did not expect that the bald crane would truly be able to do this. Even the Duke of Crimson Flame was momentarily stunned. Then the dark light in his eyes surged into the sky, and a terrifying presence erupted from his body with a bang. As that presence erupted, the Duke of Crimson Flame's skeleton lifted its right hand slowly and stretched out its index finger to point at Jing Nanzi. At the instant it did so, Jing Nanzi's expression changed drastically. Terror and disbelief appeared on his face, and he swiftly retreated without any hesitation. How could this be? That's a sealing sword. It's a sealing sword that will make all the souls of those who touch it disintegrate. It's a sealing sword personally placed in the body of the mighty cultivator from the alien races. It's a sealing sword personally placed by the mighty cultivators in void tribulations from the 4 great true worlds. There are 3 more days left. I can finally feel my body recovering. I don't have a fever anymore, but I keep coughing. I can't smoke, and my body is still a little weak. It's been a few years since I've been so sick. Once I'm completely healed, I'll explode. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 873. This is impossible. Jing Nanzi's expression changed drastically, which had never happened before. As he retreated swiftly, his pupils shrank, and shock and disbelief appeared in his eyes. What he saw surpassed the understanding of the many seals in the barren lands of divine essence that he had obtained as a true guard. In his mind, it was impossible for the seal in the barren lands of divine essence to be broken so easily. If anyone touched it, their bodies and souls would be destroyed. Even if the sealed person wanted to break the seal, they would have to pay an incredibly devastating price. Even if they managed to break the seal, they would become incredibly weak, and a cultivator in human cultivation realm would be able to injure them badly. This was why the barren lands of divine essence were cruel to the mighty cultivators of the alien races. It was also the reason why Jing Nanzi had dared to come here alone. As for the change in Black Ink Planet, it was an accident that had happened a long time ago, and it was just an accident. However, the scene before his eyes overturned Jing Nanzi's understanding, especially when he saw the hands and feet the bald crane had manifested. It looked like a birdman, and there was an incredibly smug look on its face as it held the short sword in its hand. Jing Nanzi could not help but put on an expression as if he had just seen the most terrifying malicious spirit in the world. It's an illusion. This is the divine ability of an illusion. It's an illusion that the person named Su cast just now. As Jing Nanzi retreated, a dark light shone in his eyes. He did not believe that this person could truly break the seal so easily. If that was truly the case, Then Jing Nanzi knew clearly just how terrifying and grave a disaster this was to the entire barren lands of divine essence would be. He would rather believe that this was an illusion. Even if it's not an illusion, this mighty cultivator of the alien race has just broken the seal, and it's only the first of the 3 seals, so he must be incredibly weak. The powerful presence he has right now is just a little of what he has accumulated over the years. With his true power, it's impossible for him to kill me with just one finger. Jing Nanzi's intelligence was definitely extraordinary for being able to become a true guard and reach his current state from a nobody in true Sacredine world. At that moment, a glint appeared in his eyes, and he resolutely stopped retreating. Whether it's real or fake, whether it's strong or weak, we'll know once we try. If it's real, I won't be able to escape. If it's strong, I'll definitely die. If that's the case, and I can't escape, then I'll have to see if it's real or fake. Jing Nanzi roared, and his armor shone with a crimson light. Once he tightened his grip on the long spear in his hand, he did not retreat. Instead, he moved forward and charged towards the Duke of Crimson Flame's finger. Even Su Ming's heart sank at that moment. Jing Nanzi might be arrogant, but the resolution in him was rarely seen. If Tian Lin, Long Li, or the others ran into him, they would have a different reaction, but Jing Nanzi chose to turn back after a brief moment of hesitation. Almost at the instant Jing Nanzi turned around, a hint of derision shone in the dark light in the eyes of the Duke of Crimson Flame skeleton. At the instant that derision appeared, Su Ming's pupils shrank. He could clearly see an invisible vortex forming on the Duke of Crimson Flame's right index finger when he pointed forward. That vortex could absorb the light around the area, absorb a person's gaze, and absorb all matter in the world, just like that finger. It did not contain any sort of power on its own, but the power of the law contained in it could turn something rotten into something miraculous, turning that simple finger into the will of the world. At the instant the invisible vortex appeared, the Duke of Crimson Flame's weak but mighty voice suddenly reached Su Ming's ears. An ally of the sacred abyss builders. With your soul's age, you should be the youngest of your race. Look carefully at my finger. This is the ultimate secret art of surging indulgers, indulgence. This art does not contain any law. Instead, it uses pure physical power to create a black hole in space. Once it devours all the aura and matter in the area, then shatter that black hole. At the instant it shatters, the power of this ultimate art will erupt forth. You sacred abyss builders have plenty of clones. Since you chose to use the art of surging indulgers to refine your clones, then I will let you know the surging indulgers' true power. Look carefully. As the Duke of Crimson Flame spoke, Su Ming immediately felt a wave of impact rushing into his body from all directions. At the same time, his soul surpassed his physical body with a bang and started spreading outwards. In the blink of an eye, Su Ming sensed that his soul had covered every single spot in the collapsing sealed region. It was as if a clear projection had appeared before him. He saw every corner of the sealed land. He saw shattered rocks and shattered areas everywhere. He also saw an illusory figure charging forward in the sealed land. The illusory figure exuded a thick aura of divine sense. It was Jing Nanzi's divine clone. At the same time, Su Ming also saw Long Li, who was being chased by that shadow. The slightly hunchbacked Long Li's face was pale at that moment. He was fleeing desperately, and by the looks of it, he had already reached the edge of the sealed region. He was not too far away from the exit. Yet during that instant, Su Ming looked like an outsider. At the instant the invisible black hole appeared on the Duke of Crimson Flame's finger and devoured everything in the sealed region, Jing Nanzi's divine clone, who was chasing after Long Li, started trembling. His body started distorting in an incredibly bizarre manner, as if he was being sucked away, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared while trembling. The collapsing walls around him also disappeared. Some sort of presence seemed to have been sucked away, and once that presence was sucked away, all of them turned into powder. In the distance, Long Li's eyes went wide. As he let out a shrill roar, Su Ming saw Long Li's flesh and blood squirming before shattering in the blink of an eye. First, it was his flesh and blood, then his bones, and finally his nascent divinity. An almighty, in the initial stage of world-plane realm, had his body and soul destroyed in an instant. His storage bag also crumbled, and a large amount of his personal belongings spilled out. Su Ming's breathing quickened. This might have seemed to have happened over a long period of time, but in truth, it had only happened when the Duke of Crimson Flame lifted his right hand and pointed forward. Su Ming could clearly see that when the Duke of Crimson Flame pointed forward with his right index finger, the air around his fingertips shattered. It was a black hole, and it was also this black hole that devoured everything around it, destroyed Long Li, destroyed Jing Nanzi's divine clone, and turned all the people and things that were destroyed into power that could be devoured. All of it was absorbed into the Duke of Crimson Flame's body in an unseen manner. I don't have any power on my own. I only found a weak point that exists everywhere in the air and poked it. That's how I absorbed and devoured it. Then I crushed it, and that's how it crumbled and exploded. As the Duke of Crimson Flame's voice echoed in the air, Su Ming saw his finger pierce through the black hole before his finger. This action seemed to have been slowed down several times in Su Ming's eyes, allowing him to see the entire process clearly. It was as if a sharp needle had pierced a water bag filled with water. As the water bag shattered, everything exploded. Boom! The instant it exploded was also the instant Jing Nanzi turnaround. However, what awaited Jing Nanzi was not what he believed to be fake, nor was it what he guessed to be true. He was not truly strong, and neither was he weak, as he understood him to be. This was a battle of life and death, a fate that he could not escape from. With a loud thud, the long spear in Jing Nanzi's hand fell to the ground. He stood there in a daze and lowered his head to look at Su Ming. At the same time, Su Ming also saw a bloody hole at the center of Jing Nanzi's brows, and blood was gushing out of it. The armor over his chest shattered, hiding another bloody hole at the spot where his heart was. The blood that flowed out of that bloody hole was Jing Nanzi's final chance of survival. Do you understand now? At the instant the Duke of Crimson Flame's voice traveled into the air once again, another bloody hole appeared at the center of Jing Nanzi's brows. At the same time, a fourth bloody hole appeared at the spot where his throat was, and it continued downwards until there were a total of 9 bleeding holes between the center of his brows and his heart. Those holes pierced through his body, and Su Ming could see what was behind him from the front. This is a method of using power. You might not understand it now, but when you know why there are 9 holes on his body, you will understand. As the Duke of Crimson Flame's voice echoed in the air, he pulled back his right hand. His body was still submerged in the purplish-black magma. When the dark light in the skeleton's eyes looked at Su Ming, they slowly moved away and landed on the bald crane. When he looked at the bald crane, a strange light appeared in the Duke of Crimson Flame's eyes. There was hesitation, shock, and confusion in them. In the vast galaxy beyond Crimson Flame Planet was a strange cultivation planet in the region where the 4 great true worlds were stationed to keep a lookout over the barren lands of divine essence. More accurately speaking, it was not a single cultivation planet, but 98 of them. It looked incredibly strange. It was shaped like the shape of an eye, and it looked like a twisted ladder. Each point of this strange shape was a cultivation planet. These cultivation planets were not still and unmoving, but were rotating as if there was some sort of law contained within them. Because of that, when anyone looked at the strange picture formed by the 98 cultivation planets, their hearts would tremble, as if there was some sort of supreme will contained within that picture. The picture formed by the 98 cultivation planets was known as radix in the galaxy where the 4 great true worlds kept a lookout over the barren lands. Radix was just one word, and it was said that the 4 great true progenitors had given this name to it. No one else knew its meaning. There were 19 such radix in the barren lands of divine essence that belonged to the 4 great true worlds. At that moment, one of these radix planets suddenly shone with a brilliant light on its own. That light instantly illuminated the entire galaxy, catching the attention of the people from the four great true worlds who were stationed there. At the same time, as the light spread out beyond the radix planet, an innumerable amount of faces appeared as if they were projections. Since these faces were flickering too quickly, they could not be seen clearly. After a dozen-something breaths, one of the faces suddenly froze up and no longer changed. That face belonged to none other than Jing Nanzi. Jing Nanzi, fourth-tier True Guard, cultivator from True Sacredine World. 1,700 years ago, he was given the strange treasure, the Bronze Tomb. 20 breaths ago, he died in the sealed region of Crimson Flame Planet. He died under the hands of the alien race's surging indulgence art. An aloof and merciless voice traveled forth slowly from the radix planet. Once that voice appeared, an uproar immediately stirred up in the barren lands of the four great true worlds. It had been some time since a true guard died, but this was not the main point that caused the uproar. The main point was the place where he died, what divine ability, and what race he died under. Surging indulgence race, alien race. Indulgence art, this race's inborn ability. To be continued. If you like this work, please come Achidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 874. You keep saying that I'm an abyss builder, but even I don't know of my own origins. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he spoke in a low voice. At that moment, the collapse of the sealed region had reached its peak. Dust filled the area, and shattered stones fell from the sky. The entire sealed region was rumbling, and most of it had already collapsed. Besides Su Ming, all the people who had come to this place had died. At that moment, besides the crumbling, there was no longer any danger. Su Ming looked at the Duke of Crimson Flame, at the mighty cultivator of the alien race who had lived for an unknown amount of time. He still remembered how the man had addressed him, and remembered that the man had once said that they came from the same homeland. I came from the fifth true world. There is no way that I would be mistaken about your soul. It is a pure presence belonging to the sacred abyss builders. You are an abyss builder, and you are also a member of the royal family acknowledged by all the other races in the fifth true world under the Abyss Pact made by all the other races. The sacred abyss builders have an abyss pact that is obeyed by all the other races. They are branded with life and death soul flags, and they are forged with the madness of being unable to die and being reborn. Each of the abyss builders has their own abyssal world. They set up cycles of reincarnation, and they're the only race in the universe that can resurrect the dead. A long time ago, I've already forgotten how long it has been, but the home of all the other races, the fifth true world, was invaded by the four great true worlds. That was a war that wanted to destroy all of us. The galaxy we are in was one of the battlefields in the past. In the end, we lost the war. The fifth true world collapsed, and the people from the 10,000 races either died or were sealed. But the four great true worlds also paid a devastating price for it. It was also the first time they came to understand the might of the fifth true world. None of the four great true worlds were the fifth true world's opponent. Even if two of them worked together, it would still be difficult for them to shake the fifth true world. However, the four great true worlds working together is no longer a power that the fifth true world can suppress. This is a war that has been going on for tens of thousands of years. During that war, the fifth true world was torn apart, and a devastating amount of people from all the races died. I know that you have no sense of belonging to this place. After all, you're not an abyss builder who lived in that era, but what I do know is that the abyss builders were the main target of extermination by the four great true worlds during the war in the past. I don't know how you managed to survive, but I'm certain that your father, your mother, and your ancestors all died in the war. The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice echoed in the air, and there was an ancient and grave tone to it. Su Ming was silent. He did not speak. This was the first time he heard about this, but it was just as the man had said. He could not resonate with it. He was himself, and the fifth true world was the fifth true world. After some time, Su Ming asked languidly, "Where is the entrance to the fifth true world?" The fifth true world is no longer around, so what entrance could there be? Even if there is, when I was sealed by the four great true worlds and fell in a deep sleep, the war had not ended, so I don't know. The Duke of Crimson Flame shook his head and looked at Su Ming. Since the sword seal at the top of his skull had disappeared, a large amount of flesh had appeared on his skeletal face. Let's not talk about the fifth true world. It doesn't matter whether you are an abyss builder or not. It doesn't matter whether you acknowledge it or not. We can make a deal on our own. The dark light in the Duke of Crimson Flame's eyes gradually brightened. It's impossible for me to recover my cultivation base and gather together my moon and lunar Culpa realm in the barren lands of divine essence. There is practically no presence of plain Culpa realm here. Yet even so, with my control over laws, my control over my physical body, and my understanding towards laws, unless I run into those in the later stage of world plane realm, it won't be difficult for me to kill them. And you are only in Earth cultivation realm. Even if you use all your methods to kill those in world plane realm, you can only fight against those in the initial stage of world plane realm. If you run into those in the middle stage of world plane realm, you will definitely die. That's why I can provide protection for you. I can even attack for you. The Duke of Crimson Flame's eyes sparkled as he spoke languidly. How about it? Not only can I attack for you, I can also give you a great serendipity. This sealed region might have collapsed, but it contains the power of my physical body that I have accumulated over the years. This power is useless to me, but it will be incredibly beneficial to you. At the very least, it can make your physical body reach the peak of heaven cultivation realm. In fact, it won't be impossible for your physical body to reach the level of a Lord of World Plane. As a deal, I will give you all this, and what you need to give me is very simple. I need a promise from you. When you can create the abyssal world and set up the Tao of reincarnation, you must obtain the Surging Indulger's soul sealing flag and revive the 1 million Surging Indulgers who died in the war. As long as you promise to do this, then I, the Duke of Crimson Flame, will willingly obey the Abyss Pact and help you with all my strength. The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice buzzed in the air. When it reverberated in the area, Su Ming's heart trembled. You don't need to tell me your answer just yet. You are, after all, the first person from my homeland I saw after I woke up. It doesn't matter whether our deal is completed or not, I will still give you that great serendipity first. This place is filled with my physical power, but it's already useless to me. My lunar Culpa realm is no longer around. If my lunar Culpa realm doesn't gather together again, then it doesn't matter whether it's my physical body or my cultivation base. I won't be able to train. I will give them all to you. Absorb as much as you can. As the Duke of Crimson Flame spoke, he lifted his right hand swiftly. Immediately, a vortex appeared in the purplish-black magma beneath him. As it rotated with a bang, a vast amount of physical power surged towards Su Ming. An endless amount of fine, blood-red threads also charged towards him from all directions. They surrounded Su Ming's body and filled his entire body. A focused glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. With one breath, all the pores on his body opened up, and a boundless amount of incredibly thick physical power surged into his body, continuously strengthening his flesh, blood, bones, and all the other parts of his powerful physical body. A powerful feeling of power that made Su Ming yearn for it swiftly gathered together. Su Ming could clearly sense that with each breath he took, his physical body would become slightly stronger. This sort of increase in physical power allowed Su Ming to have a clear grasp of the feeling that he was becoming stronger. His heart raced against his chest. Each time it beat, it would be filled with power, and at the same time, it would cause the blood in his body to circulate and fuse with the incoming physical power. When all his blood circulated through his body once and returned to his heart, it would be as if he had completed a complete cycle of cultivation, and he would continue growing stronger. Su Ming longed to become stronger. He longed to obtain the power to control his own fate, or else he would not have agreed to come to the sealed region with Tianlin. The true guard has died. The people from the four great true worlds might have already noticed it. We can't stay here for long. as booming sounds rang out in Su Ming's head and his body was covered by an endless amount of physical power. The Duke of Crimson Flame's voice reached his ears. At the same time, the Duke of Crimson Flame formed a seal with his right hand and pushed his palm against the purplish-black magma. With it, the collapsed sealed region started trembling with a bang. As the layers of magma solidified, they stopped collapsing like a seal, but instead turned into a gigantic stone. This rock was the entire sealed region. At that moment, under the effects of the Duke of Crimson Fire's divine ability, the rock formed by the sealed region trembled violently. As it trembled, 9 layers of ripples immediately appeared at the edges of the gigantic rock. These 9 layers of ripples turned into 9 layers of distortions. Those distortions moved along with the ripples, and in the blink of an eye, they covered the entire area. Once they filled up the entire spot on the gigantic stone, a loud bang that shook the entire Crimson Flame planet reverberated in the night sky outside. At the same time, it caused the hearts of countless cultivators to tremble, the ferocious beasts in Crimson Flame Planet to roar, and the stone formed by the sealed region in Crimson Flame Planet disappeared with a buzz. It disappeared, and the interior of Crimson Flame Planet became empty. This disappearance was due to a warp. The Duke of Crimson Flame had used up the last shred of his power in Plain Culpa Realm to execute a large-scale warp to shift the sealed region away from Crimson Flame Planet. There were numerous meteors charging through the endless galaxy. At that moment, 9 layers of ripples were trembling and reverberating within one of them. In the blink of an eye, the stone formed by the sealed region that had been shifted away from Crimson Flame Planet appeared within the meteor. The light in the Duke of Crimson Flame's eyes dimmed at that moment, but he did not immediately rest to recover. Instead, he turned his head around and stared at the bald crane, who had been fiddling with the sealed sword not too long ago, but was now flapping its wings in slight panic when the entire sealed region was shifted. "Sir, just who are you? Damn you. Why didn't you tell me about the shift beforehand? Damn it, you scared me to death. My heart is pounding. You scare me to death. I'm the most afraid of shifts. I'm traumatized. I must have had some sort of trauma in the past." The bald crane's face was stark pale. When it heard the Duke of Crimson Flame's words, it immediately glared at him. Not too far away from the man and the crane was Su Ming. At that moment, he had his eyes tightly shut in the purplish-black magma. The physical power of his body filled the area around him as he continued absorbing it. His physical body was becoming stronger and the sounds of his heart pounding against his chest. He was immersed in this state of continuously growing stronger, like a butterfly that had turned out of its cocoon and was preparing for a new life. At the same time, not long after he shifted away from the sealed region and hid in the meteor, a mighty pressure that shook the sky and earth spread out with a bang in the galaxy beyond Crimson Flame Planet. A large amount of distortion spread out, and after a moment, 1 ship, 2 ships, 3 ships, a total of 37 gigantic ships of several hundreds of thousands of feet shot through the air. Bolts of lightning in the shape of arcs spread out from these ships, and the pressure spreading out from them caused the entire Crimson Flame Planet to tremble. There were nearly 1,000 people standing on each ship, and there was a large amount of the presence of world planes spreading out from the front of the ships. In fact, there was a presence that erupted forth with a bang from the longship, right in the middle that suppressed all the other world planes, and turned into a gigantic half a sun formed by lightning in the galaxy. Since it was half a sun, it looked like a moon. That was the power of those who were half a step into Solar Culpa Realm, also known as Lunar Culpa Realm. Tomorrow is the last day. The past few days have been too difficult. I hope that all of you will be careful not to catch a cold. There's also mycoplasma and other things. This winter, this disease is very strong. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come and vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 875. No brilliance could be seen in the dark galaxy, and neither were there any clear sounds. The only thing that existed was a stillness that was akin to stillness. Occasionally, a ray of light would appear. It would be born after some unknown substance rubbed against each other in the dark galaxy. Their lives were short, and they would disappear in the blink of an eye. Cold, deathly stillness, and darkness became the eternal melody in this galaxy. 100 years ago, there was a group of meteors that had flown past this place in long, dull arcs, and their destination was unknown. 100 years later, another group of meteors whizzed past the spot where the meteors had come from in the past. This group of meteors was from 100 years ago. They had been flying in a certain trajectory for 100 years before they drew a circle in the sky and passed by this place once again. However, compared to 100 years ago, there were fewer meteors, and they were also much smaller. No one knew that there was a stone that was formed from the sealed region in one of the gigantic meteors in this group of meteors. There was purplish-black magma within that stone. There was a person sitting cross-legged in the magma. It was a young man with gray hair. His expression made him look as if he was in deep sleep. His body shone with a light that alternated between bright and dark. Chilling air spread out from the purplish-black magma around him. There was also a large amount of rotten red threads piled up at the edge of the magma, and if anyone looked at it, they would find that there was no end to it. During the 100 years, Su Ming had immersed himself in a state where his physical body absorbed the physical power of the Duke of Crimson Flame. As he continued absorbing and repairing himself, the strength of his physical body increased day by day, and he gradually became stronger. 40 years ago, his physical body had already broken through Earth Cultivation Realm and moved into the gates of Heaven Cultivation Realm. Su Ming, who had reached this realm with his dazzling physical power, meant that his body could withstand the divine abilities and arts of those in this realm. In fact, with just one punch, he could even shake the foundation of those in this realm. This was just the power of his physical body and not his cultivation base. If Su Ming's cultivation base and his various divine abilities were added into the equation, then as long as he did not use the power of world planes, he could definitely win against powerful world paragons. After all, World Plane Realm was the strongest power in the World Paragon Realm. If a normal divine ability was cast with the power of World Plane Realm, the user would be able to overturn the sky and earth with just a lift of his hand. Su Ming had a deep understanding of this. In the past, he had met the Tao slaves in the land of berserkers. These people had not even activated the power of world planes, but they were already incredibly strong. Now that he thought about it, it was not that they did not want to use it, but that the laws in the land of berserkers had suppressed the Tao slaves. It might not have affected their levels of cultivation too much, but it had suppressed their use of the power of world planes to an incredibly great degree. If the current Su Ming was in his place, then he would not even need to borrow anyone else's power when the power of world planes was suppressed in the land of berserkers. With just his own strength, he could suppress all the Tao slaves and resolve the disaster that had nearly brought him despair in the past. Lord of a world plane, I wonder when my physical body and cultivation base will reach this realm. Only then will I be considered as a powerful warrior in this galaxy. As he meditated, Su Ming opened his eyes. At the instant he did so, a brilliant light shone brilliantly within them. Before he became a lord of a world plane, Su Ming was confident that he could fight against his enemies who executed the power of world planes with the poisonous wasp and the treasure gourd. Cracking sounds came from Su Ming's body. Those were the sounds of his bones rubbing against his flesh and blood. If there was anyone else besides the Duke of Crimson Flame in this place, then they would definitely be shocked by the sounds coming from Su Ming's body. Each of those sounds contained a feeling of shattering, and when Su Ming heard them, he felt as if his own body was shattering as well. This was a feeling that was difficult to describe with words, but it was incredibly profound. Lord of a world plane, a strong desire shone in Su Ming's eyes. If you want to become a lord of a world plane, then you must have the essence of a world, and the essence of a world is the fixed power of each world. A hoarse voice came from not too far away, and it belonged to a bald man. He was nearly 20 feet tall, and he was sitting cross-legged like an iron tower. There was no hair on his head, only a picture of a ferocious beast with a body like a snake, but 6 pairs of wings was carved on the top of his head like a brand. If anyone took a closer look, they would be able to see faint traces of fire around the picture of the ferocious beast. The beast looked ferocious in the fire, and that man was naturally the Duke of Crimson Flame. During the 100 years when he was not sealed, his body had regrown flesh and blood, and he had regained his appearance in the past. A wide robe covered his body, and he gave off a strange presence. There are plenty of cultivation planets in this galaxy, and each of them can be considered a world. As long as there is a world, then there is an essence of a world, which is also the power of a world plane. If you want to become a lord of a world plane and absorb the power of a world plane to perfect yourself, then you will need to obtain the essence of a world's acknowledgement. Only when the essence of a world has acknowledged you can you absorb its power and become a lord of a world plane from then on. The larger a world is, the greater the amount of essence of a world it contains, and the more lords of world planes there will be in it. It is the same for the other way around. The number of lords of world planes in a world is not just determined by the cultivators. More importantly, it is determined by how many people the essence of a world can absorb. If a world's essence of a world is full, then no matter how great your potential is, you will not be able to become a world paragon. After all, there are only a limited number of spots. If you want to become a world paragon, then besides leaving this place and searching for another world, you will only have a chance if a world paragon dies and a spot becomes empty. The galaxy is vast, and there are plenty of cultivation planets. This also means that there are plenty of worlds, but from what I know, almost all of the worlds that have been discovered by people have already filled up the spots for world paragons within them. Su Ming lifted his head and looked at the Duke of Crimson Flame. He did not speak. There are a few lords of world planes who died in Crimson Flame Planet, but besides that true guard, the others can't be considered as true world paragons. This isn't because they don't have enough potential, but because the worlds they searched for and obtained their acknowledgement were broken to begin with. The essence of their world was almost completely dried up, which was why their achievement stopped the moment they became world paragons. In fact, they couldn't even maintain their epiphany towards laws. So how could they be worthy of being called world paragons? Only that true guard was a world paragon. After all, the world he became a world paragon was not this battlefield, but in the world outside. However, once he died, a spot became empty in the world he became a world paragon, and it has probably been snatched away a long time ago. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he asked languidly, "If that's the case, then it's practically impossible for me to become a lord of a world plane in the barren lands of divine essence." A glint appeared in the Duke of Crimson Flame's eyes as he spoke in a low voice. "I can't answer whether there's a chance or not. You'll have to make your own decision. First of all, you have to know why the realms after Heaven Cultivation Realm are known as Lords of World Planes and World Paragons. Lord and Paragons can reveal a lot of answers. A true lord of a world plane is a paragon in his or her own world plane, just like his or her master. In fact, he or she can bring forth power that surpasses his or her own in his or her world plane and fight against those who are not of that world plane. That's why they are known as lords and paragons. If they leave their world plane, then they will be like fish that have left the water. They might still be able to survive and remain powerful, but once they use up too much of their power, it will be very difficult for them to recover their power of world planes. That's why once a world paragon reaches world paragon realm, they will rarely leave their world planes. Even if they leave, they will usually return soon. If they can't return, then they will bring the world stones of their world with them to sustain themselves. Take that true guard, for example. His storage bag is, ahem, I might not have opened it, but I'm certain that there are world stones inside. When the Duke of Crimson Flame said these words, a slightly strange expression appeared on his face. He remembered that the storage bag had been not too far away from him before he closed his eyes to recover, but now it was gone. There's another method that can allow a lord of a world plane to remain at the peak no matter where he is. This method is very simple, and many people have used it before. It is also the foundation of a lord of a world plane's path of cultivation. They will continuously obtain the acknowledgement of one world after another and snatch away the spots that belong to others. Once they obtain 5,000 worlds, they will reach the middle stage of world plane realm, and once they have 10,000 worlds, they will reach the later stage of world plane realm. Once they gather the power of 10,000 worlds and fuse them into one, they will completely mend the flaws in their bodies, and they will reach great completion in world plane realm. Once they reach great completion, they will take another step forward and a hint of the presence of Culpa realm will be born, and they will reach lunar Culpa realm. If they take another step forward, they will reach the peak, and they will reach solar Culpa realm. No matter how many worlds there are, they cannot compare to the number of cultivators. The spots are limited, which is why there are wars and why there are 4 great true worlds invading the 5th true world. Su Ming suddenly asked, "This is the answer I can understand as a cultivator in lunar Culpa realm. However, the answers I obtain are different depending on where I am. But no matter what, if I want to become a world paragon, then I must kill, snatch, and snatch," the Duke of Crimson Flames said flatly, but there was a hint of brutality in his words that he did not bother to hide. What is cultivation? Cultivation is killing, snatching, and snatching. If you can kill others, snatch from others, and snatch things that don't belong to you, then you will be at the peak. If you can continue down this path, then you will naturally be at the peak. The 4 great true worlds have 4 great Culpa lords. Dao Chun from True Morning Dao World and the Sacred Emperor from True Sacredine World are both Culpa lords. They are powerful because they have the resources from the entire true world as their subordinates, which allows their cultivation to be like the serendipity of the world. After the 4 great Culpa lords are the 4 great true progenitors. They are old people who are even more terrifying than the Culpa lords. The galaxy is too big, and there are too many powerful warriors. Even if you have reached the level of the 4 great true progenitors, you still haven't reached the peak. So what if you're a master of fate, lives, and death? Your Abyss Builder's ancestor, the sovereign of the 5th true world, also died because he went mad during the raging disaster. Your people were all destroyed. I might not know how you managed to survive, but your ancestors must have paid an incredibly great price in exchange for a wisp of your race's survival. Su Ming's breathing instantly quickened. The Duke of Crimson Flame's words caused a bang to go off in his head. He remembered what his second senior brother had said about the couple who had been surrounded and attacked by the entire true Morning Dao world since ancient times. Abyss. Builders. Su Ming mumbled. If you have the chance to return to the 5th true world in the future, you can go to your people's homeland. It's very easy to find that place. There is a galaxy formed by stars in the galaxy, and within that galaxy is a faint blue cultivation planet. If it's still around and hasn't been destroyed along with your people, then you should be able to find it. If you like this work, I welcome you to give me a recommendation vote or a monthly vote. Your support is my greatest motivation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.